Hello everyone, Omni-sensei here with What If I Was Reborn as Zeus, the God of Olympus, Part 3. If you enjoy this content, please smash the like button. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to check out the original story linked in the description. I hope you enjoy listening to it.
The naming ceremony began with a low chanting of skalds, their voices echoing through the towering halls of Gladsheim like a river flowing under moonlight. Thin incense smoke curled towards the high timber beams, carrying scents of pine resin and ironwood bark. Thor stood proudly at Odin's side, while Loki lingered behind a carved wolf pillar, eyes narrowed in quiet observation. After the rites and blessings were spoken, and after the last of the attending gods had paid their respects to Odin's newborn son cradled in Frigg's arms, Odin turned to Zeus with his single eye steady and unreadable. "Walk with me," he said in his gravel-deep voice. Zeus inclined his head slightly, his golden hair sliding over his broad shoulders. He turned to Hera, resting his massive hand lightly on her arm. "I will return soon." Hera nodded once, her face still and cold as marble, before stepping back to stand beside Frigg. Odin led Zeus out through the tall bronze doors at the end of the hall, their footsteps echoing along the rune-carved walkway leading towards the outer courtyards. As the doors closed behind them, Frigg turned slightly to Hera, her pale blue eyes soft with curiosity that hid something sharper beneath. "You have never been to Asgard before," she said quietly, her voice calm as falling snow. Hera did not respond, simply folded her hands before her crimson robes, her dark gaze fixed on the flickering braziers ahead. Frigg's smile curved faintly, though her eyes remained cool. "It is rare for the Queen of Olympus to leave her halls. Though I hear you are not the Queen." "Not truly." Hera's eyes flickered towards her, unblinking and cold. "What are you implying?" Frigg tilted her head slightly, her braided gold hair shifting across her wolf fur-lined cloak. "Simply that it is Métis who wears the crown of Olympus. And yet here you are, standing in her place beside Zeus. Curious, isn't it?" Hera's jaw tightened, though her expression did not change. "And how would you know who rules Olympus, Asgardian?" Frigg's smile widened softly, though it did not reach her eyes. "Spies, dear Hera. Every realm has them. Even yours." Hera's lips curved into a faint, sharp smile. "That will be the first thing I change, when I become queen. I will rid Olympus of every eye that does not belong to me." Frigg's gaze narrowed slightly, though her smile did not fade. "Careful, Lady of Olympus. Eyes can hide in shadows, but shadows live within you too." Hera said nothing, only turned away to watch the hall where Loki now crouched, whispering to the new baby with a cunning grin on his thin lips. Frigg watched Hera for a moment longer, her gaze quiet and knowing, before turning back to her son. Outside, the morning sun glowed pale gold across Asgard's high courtyards. Frost lingered along the stone balustrades, melting under the rising warmth. Odin and Zeus walked side by side along the wolf-guarded ramparts overlooking the distant Bifrost bridge that shimmered faintly against the blue sky. Neither spoke at first. Odin's single eye was fixed on the horizon where the rainbow bridge met the clouds, his heavy black cloak trailing behind him. Zeus watched the towers of Asgard, their ruined walls older than any mortal kingdom, their spears of ironwood crowned with banners that fluttered silently in the high breeze. "You rule a quiet realm," Zeus said at last, his deep voice rolling like distant thunder across the stone. Odin chuckled faintly, the sound low and without mirth. "Quiet now, perhaps, but never peaceful. Asgard stands on the edge of every war, mortal or divine." Zeus nodded, his golden eyes narrowing faintly as he looked down at the training courtyards below. Young Einherjar warriors sparred in silent formations, their spear shafts flickering with faint blue runelight with each careful movement. "I have never been here," Zeus said. "I have heard much of Asgard, but Olympus has kept me busy." Odin's gaze flicked sideways to him, his single eye sharp under his iron brow. "Olympus keeps many busy. Even those who do not wish to be." Zeus glanced at him, studying the old god's heavy frame and the deep lines carved into his weathered face. "You speak from experience." Odin did not answer at first, simply stopping at the edge of the rampart, his hand resting lightly against the carved wolf head rail. Below them, the halls of Gladsheim glowed with torchlight as servants moved to prepare the afternoon feast. "I have lived long, King of Olympus," Odin said at last, his voice low. Long enough to know that gods rule, but are never free. Duty binds tighter than chains. Zeus watched him quietly, the breeze lifting strands of his golden hair across his face. And what would you do if those chains broke? Odin's mouth curved faintly, though his smile was thin and cold. I would forge new ones. The world needs its chains. Without them, there is nothing but chaos. Zeus looked away, his eyes darkening with quiet storms as he watched a pair of ravens wheel through the cold sky above the towers. Hugin and Munin circled once before diving down towards the feast halls below, their black feathers gleaming in the pale sun. Olympus is changing, Zeus said softly. Faster than I can command it. Faster than even Métis can guide it. Odin grunted softly, his gaze returning to the horizon. Change is a tide, Zeus. You can dam it. You can ride it. But you can never stop it. For a long moment, they stood in silence, two kings beneath a pale Asgardian sky, each bound in chains of duty and pride, neither willing to name them aloud. Finally, Odin turned, his heavy cloak swirling around his boots as he walked back towards the high doors of Gladsheim. Come, he said. The feast awaits. There will be meat enough to drown any thoughts of duty. Zeus followed him, his footsteps silent but heavy, the scent of pine smoke drifting around him as the gates of Asgard's great hall opened before them. And far behind, on the balcony overlooking the courtyard, Frigg stood watching them with quiet eyes, her pale hair stirring in the wind as Loki crept beside her, whispering secrets only he knew to the silent shadows gathering under the rising sun. The halls of Gladsheim were alive with flickering torchlight and the low hum of voices as gods gathered for the feast. The long tables had been laid with carved boar tusk platters and polished bronze cups, waiting to be filled with mead brewed from the honey of immortal bees. Servants moved silently between the tables, placing wreaths of fresh pine and ironwood leaves along the carved benches. Odin and Zeus walked side by side into the hall. As they entered, the Einherjar guards lining the wall stamped their spear butts once against the stone in silent salute, the echo ringing like distant war drums. Loki slipped past them with a grin, vanishing behind a pillar as Thor followed, his heavy boots shaking the tiled floors with each step. A low horn sounded from the outer gates. Odin paused mid-stride, his single eye narrowing as he turned towards the sound. The great iron-bound doors at the end of the feast hall swung open with a groan of ancient hinges, letting in a cold breeze that rustled the braziers and fluttered the wolf-hide banners strung across the high beams. Frigg stepped forward from where she had been standing near the hearth, her pale hair braided with silver chains that caught the light of the flames. Hera remained at her side, silent and watchful, her dark eyes following Odin as he walked towards the entry hall. The first to enter were the gods of the Vedic pantheon. Agni came first, flame flickering along his copper-dark skin, his hair burning like a silent torch above his calm, ageless face. He was clad only in a thin white dhoti embroidered with gold thread, his bare chest painted with faint lines of ash. Behind him walked Varuna, robed in deep blue silk patterned with curling silver waves, his eyes dark and vast as the ocean at midnight. Agni, Varuna, Odin rumbled, inclining his head faintly as they approached. Asgard welcomes you. May your halls remain bright with victory flames, Agni replied, his deep voice crackling faintly like kindling under heat. Varuna only nodded once, his gaze sweeping calmly across the gathering hall, taking in every flicker of shadow and light. Behind them came the Egyptian gods. Horus strode in first, clad in bronze scale armor etched with falcon wing motifs, his head crowned with the double plumes of Upper and Lower Egypt. His eyes were cold and sharp as polished obsidian. Isis followed at his side, her long black hair falling like river silk over robes of lapis blue. A faint golden glow danced around her bare arms and collarbones, her eyes calm and deep with knowing. Horus. Isis. Odin's voice softened slightly as he greeted them. It has been long since Asgard hosted the children of Ra. Too long, Horus replied coolly, his eyes flicking to Zeus for a moment before returning to Odin. May this gathering bring only wisdom. Isis inclined her head, her gaze drifting over Hera and Frigg with quiet appraisal before settling back on Odin. And may your son grow to bring honor to your name. Next came the gods of the Shinto pantheon. Amaterasu entered first, her pale skin glowing faintly with inner light, her long black hair bound up with crimson silk cords. She wore layered robes of white and gold that rustled softly with each step, her eyes gentle but edged with quiet, unbreakable will. At her side walked Susanoo, robed in dark indigo, his wild hair tied back with a thin hemp cord, his jaw shadowed with unshaven stubble. His eyes burned with restless defiance as he scanned the hall. Amaterasu. Susanoo. Odin greeted them with quiet respect. Asgard welcomes the light of the sun and the storms of the sea. Amaterasu smiled faintly, bowing her head just enough to honor him. And may your halls remain bright under that sun, All-Father. Susanoo grunted softly, his dark eyes flicking to Zeus with faint interest before narrowing as he saw Thor. A crooked smile curved his lips. Big one, isn't he? He muttered under his breath. Thor scowled, his thick brows knotting, but said nothing. Loki watched from behind a pillar, his sharp green eyes flicking between the Shinto gods and his brother, a faint smile curling his lips as quiet schemes flickered behind his gaze. Finally, the gods of the Celtic pantheon arrived. Nuada led them, his silver arm gleaming under the torchlight, his long pale hair tied back with black leather cords. His eyes were like winter dawn, gray and silent. Beside him walked Brigid, her robes woven from red gold threads that shimmered like embers. Her eyes glowed softly with warmth and hidden power, her braided hair falling across her chest like molten copper. Nuada. Brigid. Odin's voice rumbled low as he nodded in greeting. Asgard stands honored. And may your son wield his fate with honor, Nuada replied, his voice quiet and smooth as cold steel drawn from snow. Brigid inclined her head, her gaze lingering on Frigg with a faint smile before drifting to Hera, reading her silent tension with a knowing flicker of her bright eyes. The gods gathered near the high tables, murmuring quiet greetings to each other as servants poured dark honey mead into polished bronze cups. Odin turned back to Zeus, his heavy cloak trailing behind him as he gestured towards the tables. Come, he said. Let us dine before words of duty return to weigh upon our tongues. Zeus followed him, his broad shoulders moving with silent grace beneath his indigo robes. His golden hair flickered with stray lightning sparks under the torchlight as he walked, each step echoing faintly through the vast feast hall. Hera remained near Frigg, her gaze locked on Isis and Amaterasu as they spoke softly together, their voices low and musical. She felt Frigg watching her from the side, reading the cold calculation hidden behind her calm face. Many powers gather today, Frigg said softly, her voice low. Many eyes will see you, but only a few will remember what they saw. Hera tilted her head slightly, her dark eyes flicking to Frigg with a faint smile. Let them see what they wish, she whispered. The truth is only what I allow. Frigg's lips curved faintly, though her eyes remained cool. Be careful, Hera. Truth has teeth. Then I will bite back, Hera said softly, turning away to watch Zeus sit beside Odin at the high table as the skalds began their feast songs, their voices rising and falling like a quiet tide beneath the flickering hall torches. And far above them, in the cold Asgardian sky, Hugin and Munin wheeled silently, their dark feathers slicing the dawn winds as they watched gods gather, schemes twist, and the fate of realms shift like pale threads in a weaver's restless hands. The feast hall pulsed with warm light as the skalds' low chants grew into a rising chorus, their voices weaving old words of blessing and power. The gods settled along the carved benches, polished bronze cups now filled with thick golden mead that caught the flickering torchlight with each tilt. Servants moved silently between the tables, placing platters of roasted boar glazed with honey, braised venison, and steaming loaves of barley bread studded with crushed juniper berries. At the high table, Odin sat with Frigg at his side, her pale hair glowing softly in the hearthlight as she cradled their newborn son wrapped in thick white furs lined with wolf hide. Zeus sat to Odin's right, his broad shoulders unmoving as he watched the gathered gods with calm golden eyes, each flicker of lightning beneath his skin casting faint shadows along the carved wood of his throne. Hera sat just behind Zeus, positioned carefully beside Frigg, her crimson robes pooling around her feet like silent blood. Her gaze shifted from Isis and Horus to Amaterasu and Susanoo, studying every nod, every glance, her mind weaving each quiet expression into her own silent tapestry. A hush fell over the hall as Odin rose to his feet, the thick black wolf cloak pulling down his back as he lifted his free hand for silence. The skalds fell quiet at once, their chants fading into thin echoes against the dark timber beams high above. Gods of the Nine Realms, Odin said, his gravel-deep voice rolling through the hall like a tide against midnight cliffs. We gather here to witness the naming of my son. May his name carry the power of Asgard and bring honor to his line. He turned to Frigg, his single eye softening faintly as he nodded. Frigg lowered her gaze to the baby in her arms, brushing her fingers gently over his small dark hair before lifting him high towards the silent gods. "This child," Frigg said softly, her voice carrying despite its calmness, "is Baldur. May his beauty bring light to Asgard, and his wisdom bring peace." A ripple of murmured blessings moved through the hall. Amaterasu bowed her head, the faint light glowing from her skin brightening slightly. Isis smiled faintly, whispering words under her breath that tasted of Nile reeds and sweet lotus oil. Agni lifted one copper-dark hand, his flame flickering into a small silent lotus of fire hovering above his palm in blessing. "Baldur," Odin repeated, his voice deep with quiet pride. "May he grow strong under the gaze of all realms. May he walk with light." Thor stepped forward then, his thick arms folded across his broad chest, his heavy boots thudding against the stone floor with each step. He stood before his father and mother, his blue eyes locked on his baby brother, their usual stormy roughness softened with rare quiet. "I will watch over him," Thor said, his voice slow but firm. "No blade, no curse, no shadow will touch him while I draw breath." Frigg smiled, her eyes bright with quiet tears as she nodded to her eldest son. Loki slinked forward from the shadows behind a wolf-carved pillar, his dark green tunic swaying around his thin frame. He tilted his head, his sharp green eyes glittering faintly under his long black hair as he looked at the baby. "Light," Loki murmured, his voice soft as falling frost. "May he always carry it, for there are many here who will need it." Thor scowled faintly at his brother's tone but said nothing. Odin only studied Loki with his single eye, silent understanding flickering between them before he turned back to the gathered gods. "Come forth," Odin said, his gaze sweeping across the tables. "Offer your blessings." One by one, gods stepped forward. Agni placed his flame lotus gently at Frigg's feet before stepping back, his copper-dark face calm and unblinking. Varuna lifted his hand, conjuring a thin, curling stream of shimmering water that coiled like a serpent around the baby before fading into mist, leaving a faint scent of salt and ocean winds. Horus pressed two fingers lightly against Baldur's brow, whispering blessings of hawksight and sun strength in quiet ancient Egyptian. Isis brushed her fingertips across the baby's chest, a faint golden glow flickering across his small heart as she whispered words of life and protection. Amaterasu stepped forward, her white and gold-layered robes rustling softly. She reached into her sleeve and withdrew a small folded paper charm tied with crimson thread. She placed it against Baldur's chest, whispering in soft old Japanese. The charm glowed briefly before fading into his skin like mist under dawn. "May he rise always in light," she said, her voice calm as sunrise. Susanoo merely inclined his head, his dark eyes sharp as he watched the baby before stepping back without a word. Nuada approached last, his silver arm gleaming under torchlight as he pressed his metal fingers lightly against Baldur's small hand. His gray eyes were quiet, unreadable as frost. "May his blade always remain clean," Nuada murmured softly before stepping back. Brigid placed a single red gold thread into Baldur's furs, whispering blessings of fire and poetry before returning to Nuada's side. The hall fell silent as Odin raised his free hand again, his heavy frame unmoving as he looked around at the gathered gods. "You honor my son with your blessings," he said, his voice low. "Asgard remembers each word, each flame, each thread given today." Zeus inclined his head slightly from where he sat, his golden hair sliding over his broad shoulders. "He will grow strong under your name, Odin," he said quietly. "And Asgard will rise with him." Odin's single eye flicked to Zeus, a faint cold smile crossing his lips before vanishing just as quickly. "May Olympus remain bright under your storms, Zeus." Hera watched the exchange in silence, her dark eyes locked on Odin's face, reading every flicker of tension beneath his calm expression. She turned her gaze briefly to Frigg, who cradled Baldur close, whispering soft words only the baby could hear. The Skalds began their final chant, low voices rising and falling in solemn waves as Hugin and Munin wheeled high above the towers outside, their black feathers slicing the pale blue morning sky. The scent of pine resin, roasted boar, and thick honey mead rose into the flickering torchlit beams as the gods settled back to their tables, the naming ceremony closing with quiet dignity. Thor stepped forward again, grabbing a massive bronze cup of mead and raising it high. "To Baldur," he roared, his deep voice echoing against the stone walls. "Light of Asgard." "To Baldur," the hall echoed, voices rising like thunder under the flickering flames. And far beyond the walls of Gladsheim, in the silent golden sky, The nine realms shivered faintly as fate's thread shifted around a name newly spoken into the world, tying destinies yet unseen in quiet knots of light and shadow. Olympus, the silent dawn. The sun rose pale over Olympus, washing the marble halls in dim gold. Thin clouds drifted around the mountain peak, carrying cool winds that rustled olive branches and whispered across the sleeping gardens. The god's palace lay quiet under dawn's first touch, a stillness rarely felt in these halls of endless voices. But deep within the eastern wing, behind tall silver doors marked with peacock feather carvings, Hera's private cohort gathered. Their silent footsteps echoed faintly through the veiled chamber as they knelt one by one before Kratos, his massive frame draped in dark bronze and black cloth. His iron-dark eyes swept over them, unblinking, reading their fear and obedience with cold stillness. Bia stood at his right, silent and sharp-eyed, her long black hair tied back in a single braided cord. Phobos leaned casually against a carved marble pillar, his faint smile curling as he twirled a thin dagger between his fingers. The faint scent of blood always clung to him, sweet and metallic like copper left out under the sun. Aeschylus drifted among them like mist, his pale robe whispering across the marble, his heavy-lidded eyes flickering with dreams only he could see. "Today," Kratos rumbled, his deep voice vibrating through the quiet hall, "we act." Bia's dark eyes flickered up at him without emotion. "All preparations are complete. Her orders stand unchanged." Phobos's grin widened faintly as he sheathed his dagger with a quiet snick. "Finally. The halls have been silent too long." Aeschylus did not speak. His thin fingers traced symbols into the drifting incense smoke before him, dream visions curling in faint purple mist around his pale knuckles. Kratos turned, his heavy sandal striking the marble with each step as he approached the brazier burning low at the chamber center. Blue flame flickered among crushed sandalwood, casting thin shadows up across his hard face. "Zeus is in Asgard," he said quietly. "And Hera stands beside him. Métis is alone." Bia tilted her head slightly, her dark eyes unblinking. "Will Poseidon move?" Kratos's jaw tightened faintly. "He will keep order. That is his only role today." Outside, thin white doves perched along the palace ledges, their heads tucked under wings as dawn spread across Olympus. Servants moved through the high halls, carrying folded robes of white and gold, preparing the throne room for Métis's morning assembly. None noticed the shadows gathering within Hera's silent wing. Phobos pushed off from his pillar, rolling his shoulders lightly beneath his dark tunic. "I will take the western approach," he said softly, his grin thin as a blade. "No one sees shadows when light blinds them." Bia nodded once, her expression blank. "I will silence the guards." Aeschylus drifted past them both, his pale robe whispering as dream mist coiled from his fingers. "I will show her peace before she dies," he murmured, his voice soft as sleep's last sigh. "That is mercy." Kratos said nothing. He only watched them for a long moment, reading each face, each flicker of movement, each ripple of fear or anticipation that twisted through their silent hearts. Finally, he turned back to the brazier, lifting his massive hand to hover above the thin blue flames. "Hera's will," he said softly, almost reverently. "It binds us." "Hera's will," they whispered back in unison, their voices low and cold as winter winds sliding across moonlit stone. In the throne room, Métis stood before the tall mirrored columns, her lavender robes trailing across pale marble veined with gold. Her dark hair fell unbound around her shoulders, still damp from her morning bath. She reached for the carved silver comb lying upon a thin cloth, pulling it slowly through her hair with measured grace. Her gaze flicked to her reflection, calm and unreadable. The lines of her face remained smooth, but shadows of fatigue marked the skin beneath her eyes. She set the comb down lightly upon the table, exhaling softly as she rested her fingers against its cool metal. Behind her, the tall bronze doors opened silently. Bia entered first, her step silent despite the iron-capped sandals she wore. Métis's gaze flicked to the mirror, watching her approach without turning. "Lady Bia," she said softly, her voice calm. "What brings you here before assembly?" Bia did not answer. She simply raised her hand in a swift, cutting gesture. Two guards standing by the far pillar stiffened briefly before collapsing to the floor, their throats split in a single clean motion. The faint scent of blood rose into the quiet morning air, sharp and metallic. Métis's gaze darkened faintly. She turned slowly from the mirror, folding her hands before her robe. "So it begins," she murmured. Phobos stepped from behind a tall marble screen, his grin wide, teeth bright in the shadowed chamber. "You knew." "Of course," Métis said calmly. "I see all paths, even those that end in shadow." Aeschylus drifted forward, dream mist curling around his pale hands as his heavy-lidded eyes flickered with shifting purple light. "Then sleep," he whispered, his voice trembling with quiet hunger. "Sleep and dream no more." Kratos entered last, his massive frame blocking the faint dawn light pouring through the bronze doors behind him. He walked forward, his iron-dark eyes locked on Métis, unblinking, unfeeling. She raised her gaze to meet his, quiet and steady despite the four shadows closing around her. "Do you serve her?" Métis asked softly, "because you believe in her, or because you fear her?" Kratos said nothing. He simply raised his massive hand, fingers curling into a crushing fist as he stepped forward. Métis closed her eyes for a brief moment. A faint smile curved her lips. "Tell Hera." She whispered, "Dreams never die. They simply sleep, waiting to wake again." Then Kratos moved, and the quiet dawn shattered under the silent scream of fate twisting around the halls of Olympus. The moment Kratos lunged forward, the silent dawn split with a deep, pulsing vibration. Marble columns trembled. Thin cracks raced up their carved lengths, scattering flecks of white dust across the polished floor. Kratos' massive fist froze inches from Métis' chest. His iron-dark eyes flicked sideways in shock, feeling an unseen force gripping his wrist like a vice. "Step back." The voice was quiet, almost gentle, but it carried a weight that turned every shadow in the hall cold. Slowly, Kratos turned his head. Rhea stood in the shattered doorway, her robe of pale moss green drifting around her feet like river fog. Her hair, streaked with silver and dark gold, fell loose down her back, rippling faintly with an unseen breeze. Around her ankles, wildflowers bloomed from the cracks in the marble, their white petals trembling. Bia stepped forward sharply, raising her hand in another killing gesture, but Rhea simply raised her eyes to her, calm and unblinking. "Child," Rhea whispered softly. Bia froze mid-step. Her mouth opened slightly as her eyes rolled back, her body locking in place. A thin vine sprouted from beneath the marble at her feet, curling softly around her ankles, flowering into small white blossoms that brushed against her skin. Phobos snarled, flicking his dagger from its sheath with a fluid spin of his wrist. He lunged forward, aiming for Rhea's throat, his grin stretching wide. But before he could reach her, roots erupted from the cracks beneath him, coiling around his legs like iron chains. They dragged him down to his knees, the marble buckling under his weight. He slashed desperately at the thick vines, but for every root he cut, two more emerged, wrapping around his arms and chest, tightening until his breath came in sharp, ragged gasps. Aeschylus drifted back, his heavy-lidded eyes widening faintly as the dream mist coiling from his hand shifted, recoiling into his sleeves. "Rhea," he whispered, his voice trembling. "Mother of gods. Lady of earth and birth, this is not your war." Rhea's gaze flicked to him, her eyes dark and infinite, filled with silent forests and deep ancient roots. "All wars are mine," she said softly. "I birthed them all." She raised her hand, and Aeschylus fell to his knees, his robes pooling around him like mist collapsing into dew. His eyes rolled back, and he slumped forward, dream mist curling softly across the marble floor around his still form. Kratos growled low in his chest, forcing his fist downwards with a roar. Rhea turned to him fully, her expression still calm, though her eyes burned faintly with quiet green light. "Kratos," she whispered, her voice edged with sadness. "You were born of my blood. Do not force me to bury you." Kratos' massive arm trembled, every muscle straining against the invisible force gripping his wrist. Veins bulged across his forearm as he snarled, his iron-dark eyes narrowing. "I serve Hera," he spat. "Her will binds me." Rhea stepped forward, the wildflowers blooming around her feet with each silent stride. She reached up and pressed her palm lightly against his broad chest. For a brief moment, Kratos froze. His eyes flickered faintly with something softer beneath the rage, grief, exhaustion, something ancient and forgotten. Then the force around his wrist tightened, forcing his fist open. Rhea's fingers pressed deeper against his chest. You serve the world before all else, she whispered. Remember who you are. Kratos' breath hitched. His knees buckled as he sank to the floor, his massive frame slumping forward, shoulders trembling with silent sobs he refused to let escape his lips. The vines receded from his arms, falling back into the cracked marble with faint, rustling sighs. Métis stood unmoving, watching quietly as Rhea lowered her hand from Kratos' chest. Her lavender robes whispered softly as she stepped forward, bowing her head slightly to the elder Titaness. Thank you, Métis said, her voice calm, though her eyes glimmered faintly with quiet relief. Rhea did not reply. She turned, sweeping her moss-green robes around her ankles as she walked to where Phobos still struggled against the vines binding him. She lowered herself to his level, her pale hair drifting across his flushed face. You have always delighted in blood, she whispered softly, brushing her fingers across his forehead. But blood is life, not death. Phobos's eyes widened. For the first time in centuries, his grin faded. Tears welled silently in his dark eyes, though he did not look away. Rhea touched his cheek lightly before rising again. The hall was silent but for the quiet hiss of vines retreating into the cracked marble. Thin green shoots remained behind, curling around the fallen guards, their wounds now sealed by bark and blossom. Bia stood unmoving, her body locked in place by the single vine curling around her ankles. Her sharp eyes flicked towards Rhea, unblinking. Release me, she whispered. My life is hers. Rhea studied her for a long moment, sadness flickering across her calm face. No life belongs to another, she said softly. With a faint flick of her wrist, the vine unwound. Bia collapsed to her knees, gasping as if surfacing from deep water. She bowed her head low, black hair falling around her face. Métis stepped forward, folding her hands before her robe. What now? She asked quietly, her gaze flicking between Kratos, Bia, and Phobos. Rhea looked at her, her eyes dark and infinite. Now, you rule. And I return to my silence. Métis's lips curved faintly. Will you watch us? Always, Rhea whispered. She turned and walked back through the shattered bronze doors. Flowers bloomed in her footsteps, curling across the marble floor in soft white and pale violet. The thin morning sun spilled through the broken doorway, casting long shadows across the throne room floor. Métis turned to Kratos, who knelt silent and unmoving at her feet. She reached out and touched his bowed head lightly. Rise, she said softly. I will not punish loyalty, even when it is given to another. Kratos lifted his head slowly, his iron-dark eyes flickering with silent gratitude. He rose to his feet, towering over her, but said nothing. Bia moved to stand behind him, silent as always, her sharp eyes now softened with quiet shame. Phobos pushed himself to his knees, his grin gone, his dark eyes wide and trembling as he stared at the thin vines retreating into the cracked marble. Icelus remained slumped where he fell, dream mist drifting quietly around his sleeping form. Métis turned from them all, her lavender robe sweeping across the marble floor as she walked to the high throne. She sat down lightly, folding her hands in her lap, her gaze calm and unblinking as she looked out across the silent hall. Outside, the sun rose higher above Olympus, washing the marble towers in pale gold and quiet warmth. But deep within its silent halls, shadows shifted and fate twisted, binding gods in threads no one would see until it was far too late to unweave them. Hera stood at the edge of Asgard's feast hall, silent and unmoving as the final songs of Baldur's naming faded into the flicker of torchlight. Her crimson robes pooled around her feet like spilled wine, her dark eyes half-lidded in quiet calculation. Servants moved around her, pouring fresh mead into bronze cups and clearing platters heavy with roasted boar and barley bread. But Hera saw none of it. She felt it. By now, Olympus would be hers. She could almost taste the quiet triumph blooming on her tongue, the sweet iron tang of a fate fulfilled. Métis would be dead by dawn's rise. The throne room would lie silent under the first light, guarded by her loyal cohort until Zeus returned to crown her queen. Her heart beat slow and calm in her chest as she folded her hands before her, her gaze fixed ahead but seeing far beyond these halls. Soon. She whispered under her breath, so faintly that no one heard her. Soon, I will stand above them all. A deep chuckle broke her quiet thoughts. She blinked, turning slightly to see Zeus watching her from where he sat beside Odin at the high table. His golden hair fell loose down his broad shoulders, flickering with faint lightning as he tilted his head. His lips curved into a knowing smile that did not touch his eyes. He sees, Hera thought, her stomach tightening. Does he know? Zeus raised his mead cup faintly in her direction before setting it down. His gaze drifted back to Odin as they resumed quiet conversation, but his fingers drummed lightly against the table, each tap like thunder rolling across a silent field. He knows. And he does not fear it. Hera's lips tightened. She turned away sharply, her crimson robes whispering around her ankles as she walked to the high balcony overlooking the dark Asgardian courtyards below. Cold wind rushed past her face, snapping her braided hair against her neck. Far beyond, the fractured lights of Bifrost shimmered under a pale dawn moon. He knows, she thought again, gripping the carved wolf head railing so tightly her knuckles paled. He knew because he asked for help. Days before the naming ceremony, long before dawn had brushed Olympus with gold, Zeus walked alone down the winding forest paths of Gaia's domain. The air was heavy with green mist and the rich, quiet scent of moss-covered roots. Thin silver streams coiled between wide oaks and pale poplars, their waters glowing softly in the eternal twilight beneath Gaia's canopy. Zeus walked with his robes gathered at his waist, bare feet silent against damp moss and cool black earth. His golden hair fell loose down his back, faint lightning flickering across his shoulders, casting thin shadows that curved like claws through the drifting fog. At the path's end lay a wide clearing ringed with towering black-barked trees. In its center sat Rhea. She knelt upon a woven mat of woven reeds and pale flowers, her moss-green robe pooling around her legs, her silver-streaked hair falling down her back like river water. Before her lay a great stone basin carved with spiraling runes, filled with still black water reflecting the dim canopy above. Zeus stepped forward and knelt at her side, his breath rising softly in the cool morning air. Mother. Rhea's eyes remained closed. A thin green light flickered between her long lashes as she inhaled deeply, feeling the pulse of the roots far below. For a long moment, she did not speak. Then she opened her eyes. Zeus, she whispered, her voice rough and tired, edged with quiet sorrow. You should not be here. Zeus bowed his head. Gaia still suffers. Rhea exhaled, lifting her pale hands to hover above the dark water. Thin vines rose from the basin, blooming into pale violet flowers that spilled their scent into the clearing like drifting sleep. She suffers because we let her, Rhea said softly, her eyes flicking to his face. She is the earth. All wounds cut deepest into her. Zeus reached out, resting his massive hand lightly over hers. Thunder trembled faintly in the clouds above, though none showed in the twilight sky. I will heal what I can, he said quietly. Rhea studied him for a long, silent moment. Then she nodded. Together they knelt before the stone basin. Zeus closed his eyes, calling lightning to coil around his arms, crackling softly as it bled down his fingertips into the water. Rhea murmured low words in the Titan tongue, summoning deep root sleep and earth-mending songs older than any god. The basin's water pulsed with gold and green light, flickering like dawn through leaves. Far below, the roots of Gaia shivered, curling tighter around Olympus's foundations, feeling the quiet touch of healing run through her veins. When it was done, Rhea leaned back, her chest rising and falling with slow exhaustion. Zeus let his lightning fade, his broad shoulders slumping faintly under the weight of spent power. Rhea looked at him with tired eyes that burned with ancient knowing. Why are you here, son of Cronus? She asked quietly. This healing was not your only purpose. Zeus said nothing for a moment. Then he opened his eyes, lightning flickering behind his golden gaze. I need your help. Rhea tilted her head slightly, her moss-green robe rustling softly across the mat. Hera. Zeus's jaw tightened faintly. She plots to kill Métis. She thinks I do not see it, but I see everything. And you let it unfold, Rhea whispered, sadness curling through her words like mist through branches. Why? Zeus looked away, staring into the dark water where pale flowers drifted across silent ripples. Because Olympus must learn, he said softly. They must see what she is, before I crown her. Rhea's gaze darkened faintly, but she nodded once. You want me to stop her? Zeus turned back to her, his eyes unblinking. I want Métis to live. I want Olympus to remain strong, even if Hera's ambition burns it down around her. Rhea closed her eyes for a long moment. When she opened them again, they glowed faintly with deep green light, the light of roots coiling through black earth, of sap pulsing up the heart of silent trees. "I will stop her," she whispered. Rhea smiled faintly, though her eyes remained sad. Back in Asgard, Hera stood alone on the high balcony, the cold dawn wind biting into her skin. Her eyes flicked down to the stone courtyard far below, watching Loki and Thor spar beneath the pale morning light. Behind her, the feast hall rang with laughter and skald songs as gods drank to Baldur's future. She closed her eyes, breathing in the chill air. In her mind, she saw Olympus, her throne, her halls, her name sung by every god. But far away, in Gaia's silent heart, vines curled softly through dark soil. And in Olympus's throne room, Métis still sat upon her high seat, lavender robes pooling like pale mist, her quiet gaze locked on the dawn rising beyond the marble columns. Hera opened her eyes, her calm mask slipping for just a moment as quiet rage flickered beneath her dark gaze. He knows. He always knows. Behind her, Zeus watched from the high table, silent and unmoving as thunder rolled faintly beneath his skin, each quiet beat a promise, and a warning, that fate's threads were never spun by mortal or god alone. Hera stood on the balcony, her eyes locked on the distant blue horizon. The dawn breeze brushed against her face, cooling the quiet fury burning beneath her skin. She gripped the carved wolf head railing tighter, her nails digging into the cold stone. She felt it, the moment her plans died. One of her shadows in Olympus, a silent Craupit perched atop the eastern towers, whispered it into her mind. Métis still lived. Her cohort had failed. Rhea had intervened. Her vision blurred faintly with silent rage. She could hear the feast hall behind her, skald songs rising with flickering torchlight as gods laughed, cups clinking against bronze plates piled with roasted meat. And amidst it all, she felt his eyes on her. "Why?" She whispered under her breath, her voice trembling with quiet disbelief. "Why does he always stand in my way?" "Hera." His voice cut through her thoughts like thunder rolling across a still sea. She turned, her crimson robe swirling around her ankles. Zeus stood at the edge of the balcony, his broad shoulders framed by the flickering torchlight behind him. His golden hair fell loose down his back, faint lightning dancing across his bare chest where his robe had loosened in the feast's warmth. His electric blue eyes met hers, unblinking, calm. "You knew," she said softly, her voice low and edged with bitterness. "You always knew." Zeus didn't answer at first. He stepped forward, each stride silent despite his size, until he stood before her. The cold breeze whipped strands of her dark hair across her cheeks, but she didn't move to brush them away. "I did," he said quietly, his deep voice rumbling like distant storm clouds. "I always know." Hera's lips trembled faintly, her chest tightening as she tried to speak. "Then why let me plan it? Why let me hope, if you were only going to crush me again?" Zeus reached out, brushing his knuckles softly against her cheek. The warmth of his skin cut through the chill wind, seeping into her bones. She flinched at first, then went still beneath his touch. "Because Olympus is not ruled by hope or fear," he said quietly. "It is ruled by strength and mercy." Her eyes narrowed, cold and sharp as obsidian knives. "Mercy? Is that what this is? Mercy?" Zeus's gaze flickered faintly with sadness. He lowered his hand from her cheek, resting it lightly against the railing beside her. His golden eyes watched the pale sky above Asgard's towers, quiet and unblinking. "You think power means having no rivals, crushing every threat. That is not power, Hera. That is fear wearing a crown." She stared at him, silent, her breath coming in short trembling pulls as the dawn winds tugged at her braids. "Then what is power?" she whispered. Zeus turned his gaze back to her, and for a moment, lightning flickered quietly behind his golden eyes. "Power is knowing when to hold the sword, and when to sheath it." She looked away sharply, tears blurring her vision as silent rage twisted into quiet despair. "You say that because you have it all," she spat softly. "You have Olympus. You have Asgard's respect. You have Métis. You have everything I wanted." He was silent for a long moment. Then he sighed softly, resting his massive hand lightly over hers where it gripped the railing. His warmth seeped through her cold knuckles, easing the trembling of her fingers. "Hera," he said quietly. Olympus does not need one queen, it needs you. Just as you are. As you have always been. She blinked, turning back to him with wide dark eyes. Her lips parted faintly, but no words came out. Zeus smiled softly, the corners of his eyes crinkling with quiet sadness. I once heard a mortal say, in the end, we only regret the chances we didn't take, the love we didn't give, and the decisions we waited too long to make. His thumb brushed over her knuckles, calloused and warm. Don't regret this chance, Hera. Don't waste your love. Don't wait too long to decide what you truly want. She closed her eyes, a single tear sliding down her cheek. For a moment, silence wrapped around them like a warm dark cloak, hiding them from the laughing gods and the distant flicker of dawn beyond the balcony. When she opened her eyes again, the rage was gone. Only quiet exhaustion remained, edged with faint, trembling hope. Can I still be queen? She whispered, her voice cracking with quiet vulnerability. Even after everything? Zeus smiled faintly, leaning down until their foreheads pressed together. His warm breath brushed across her lips as he whispered, "You were always a queen." Her breath hitched. And then, slowly, her shaking fingers uncurled from the railing to grip his robe instead. He tilted his head slightly, pressing his lips softly against hers. The kiss was deep and silent, tasting of honeyed mead and quiet grief, of lightning storms and red poppy oil. His massive arms wrapped around her, pulling her against his chest as the dawn wind rushed past them, lifting the edges of her crimson robes like dying embers rising to the pale sky. When he pulled back, his blue eyes burned softly with promise. "Come," he murmured, his voice low and rough with quiet hunger. "The All-Father has given us a room. Let me remind you why Olympus bows to us both." She said nothing. She only nodded faintly, her lips trembling with unspoken grief and hope. Together they turned, walking back into the warmth of Asgard's feast hall. Servants bowed low as Zeus led Hera through the torchlit corridors towards their private chamber. His massive hand remained at her back, his touch firm and silent, the quiet promise of storms yet to come and the endless dawns that would follow them. Morning broke over Asgard with slow golden light. Thin beams slipped through the hanging drapes, pooling across the polished stone floor like spilled honey. Outside, the mountains shimmered under a fresh dusting of snow. Temple bells rang faintly in the distance, calling the gods to wake. Zeus adjusted his dark blue cloak as he fastened the final bronze clasp. His bare chest, still lined with fading lightning marks, disappeared beneath the thick folds. Hera stood near the window, brushing her long dark hair with a slow, practiced hand. The breeze lifted the edge of her crimson robe, revealing the faintest imprint of a bite on her shoulder. Neither spoke about the night before. They didn't need to. Instead, they moved around each other like calm fire and steady wind. Quiet, familiar, no longer at war. A soft knock at the door. Zeus turned, voice firm but gentle. "Enter." The door creaked open, revealing a young Asgardian boy in gold armor a size too large. He bowed low, holding out a scroll. "All-Father Odin sends word," the boy said nervously, glancing between them. "He and Lady Frigg await you at the gate of Mimir." Zeus took the scroll but didn't unroll it. "Tell him we'll be there shortly." The boy nodded quickly and backed away, nearly tripping over the thick rug before slipping out. Once they were alone again, Hera fastened the final clasp of her shoulder pin and turned to face him. Her eyes, softened but still sharp, lingered on his chest a moment longer than necessary. Zeus raised a brow. "What?" he asked, half a smile forming. She looked away, lips twitching faintly. "You snore." He laughed quietly, shaking his head. "No, I don't." "You do." Like thunder rolling over wet mountains. He crossed the room in 2 slow steps and reached out to adjust the edge of her cloak, letting his hand linger a breath too long at her collarbone. His eyes searched hers. "Then it suits me." She held his gaze for a long second before finally looking down and smoothing the folds of her robe. "It does." They left the chamber in silence, walking side by side down the wide stone corridors of Asgard's palace. Servants bowed low. Valkyries watched from the balcony rails above. The halls, usually loud with footfalls and song, seemed quieter this morning, as if Asgard itself watched them leave. At the gate of Mimir, Odin stood waiting with Frigg beside him. Behind them, Thor adjusted the strap on his axe, and Loki lounged against a stone pillar, arms crossed and bored as ever. Frigg stepped forward first, her robes billowing like mist. She kissed Zeus on both cheeks, then Hera. Her smile was soft and knowing, the kind that saw through everything but said nothing. "I trust your stay was restful," she said, voice light as snow. "It was," Hera answered. "Your hospitality was perfect, as always." Odin's one eye glinted beneath his heavy brow. "You leave before the second feast?" Zeus nodded. "Olympus calls. I've been away too long." The All-Father chuckled, his voice deep and raw like stone grinding against stone. "You're always away too long. That's your curse." Zeus smiled faintly. "And yours is knowing when to speak, and when to let the silence do it for you." Odin's grin deepened, pleased. Zeus turned toward Thor, who straightened slightly and stepped forward with the restrained awkwardness of someone unsure if he should bow or just stand tall. Zeus reached into his robe and drew out a thick leather-wrapped bundle, no longer than his forearm. "I forged this long ago in Olympus. Never found the right wielder." He unwrapped it slowly, revealing a thick golden bracer etched with runes from both realms, Greek and Norse. Lightning shimmered faintly beneath the metal. It channels storm. Not just lightning, but the balance between rage and patience. He handed it to Thor, who took it with a reverent touch. "Thank you," Thor said, voice lower than usual. "This means a lot." "Wear it well," Zeus said. "Or not at all." Thor nodded, then quietly stepped back. There was no show of thanks, no grand gesture. Just the weight of something earned. Then Hera stepped forward. Her eyes swept past Odin, past Thor, until they landed on Loki, still slouched, still uninterested. She smiled. It was the kind of smile that made even snow hesitate to fall. "I brought something for you too, Loki." He raised a brow. "Did you?" She drew out a small wooden box, thin and long, and held it out. "From the vaults of Gaia. A gift from one trickster to another." Loki stared at it, cautious. "You're not giving me poison, are you?" "Would I waste poison on you?" she said with a soft scoff. He stepped forward, took the box, and opened it slowly. Inside lay a silver dagger with a twisted handle and a blade so thin it looked like it could cut sound itself. "A god's blade," Loki whispered, tone almost reverent. "But not Greek." "No," Hera said, her voice cool and pleasant. "It's Titan steel. From before the fall." Loki's grin widened. "I love you." "Of course you do." Zeus didn't say a word, but Hera didn't miss the twitch in his jaw. She didn't look at him, just folded her hands neatly and stepped back beside him. Odin watched the exchange with quiet amusement. "You two will never change." Frigg smiled gently. "That's why they lead Olympus." At that, golden light shimmered behind Zeus and Hera. The Olympian gate unfolded in midair, tall, ancient, and carved with constellations. The marble arch pulsed softly with divine energy. Zeus turned to Odin and bowed low, arms crossed. "Odin. Frigg. Until next time." "May it be a long time," Odin muttered with a crooked grin. Hera nodded to Frigg, then Loki, then Thor. Her gaze lingered one last time on the snowy peaks of Asgard before she stepped through the gate. Zeus followed. And just like that, they were gone, vanishing in a ripple of gold. Silence returned to the mountaintop. Loki flipped the dagger once, then twice. "I think I like her more than him." Thor muttered, "I think she likes you more than him." Odin just stared at the closing gate. The sky shakes differently when they're together. Frigg smiled softly. "It always has." The wind picked up again. Snow began to fall. Asgard returned to quiet. And far away, Olympus stirred. Let me know when you're ready to continue with their return to Olympus or another god's perspective. The golden ripple of the gate shimmered once, then split open like a calm sea parting for gods. Zeus stepped through first, the folds of his dark cloak brushing against the marble floor. Behind him, Hera followed with silent poise, her red robe trailing like fire in the wind. The air around them shimmered slightly with the aftershock of divine passage, then settled as the gates sealed shut behind them. Olympus exhaled. The palace halls lit with a soft pulse, as if the mountain itself felt them return. "Welcome back," called a voice from the upper balcony. Hephaestus, still young, not yet a god, only a smith's apprentice under Centimane's guidance, leaned from the railing with wide eyes before catching himself and stepping back. Others followed. Minor gods, attendants, and dryads cloaked in gold-veined robes. They gathered in clusters across the upper halls and courtyards, peeking from behind columns and staircases. "Zeus is back," someone whispered below. One of the nymphs pressed a hand over her mouth, eyes shining. Another let out a small, surprised laugh. And then, as if Olympus itself had been holding its breath this whole time, the laughter spread. Soft, then warm, then full. A chorus of life returned to the halls. By the time Zeus and Hera reached the central atrium, dozens had gathered, spirits of the wind, sky heralds, divine messengers, and even the old court scribes who rarely left their scroll dens. A few bowed. Most didn't. This wasn't about reverence. It was relief. They were home. Zeus gave a small nod, his lips twitching into a rare half-smile. Hera glanced around once, then exhaled softly, her shoulders lowering ever so slightly beneath the silk of her robe. "You look different," one of the elder muses whispered to Hera with a quiet smile. "I feel different," she said, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "Did Asgard suit you?" "It was cold," Hera replied, eyes sharp but amused. "But peaceful." "And you, my lord?" The muse turned to Zeus. He lifted his gaze to the highest dome above them, where a beam of sunlight filtered through. "It reminded me that we don't rule alone in this world, and that Olympus must be guarded, even from itself." The mood shifted for just a second, subtle but real. Then Hera stepped forward and took his hand, and the tension broke. One by one, the gathered divine beings bowed and quietly dispersed, returning to their temples, chambers, and duties. Olympus didn't pause long. It never did. But the air was lighter now. Laughter returned to the corridors. Harp strings sang again from the terraces. Even the ever-silent guards posted at the outer wall allowed themselves a breath. Zeus and Hera continued toward the inner sanctum without speaking. When they reached the fork in the long colonnade, one path leading west toward the Hall of Sky and Storm, the other east toward the old Athenaeum, Hera paused. "I'll visit the archives," she said simply. Zeus nodded. "I'll meet you at dusk." She touched his chest briefly with 2 fingers, just a small gesture, then turned and walked away. Zeus watched her go until the folds of her robe vanished behind the marble pillars. Then he turned, heading toward the quiet inner chambers, where Métis waited. The air was still in the quiet stone room. No guards. No servants. Just the scent of wild lavender and ocean salt, drifting from the open window. The curtains moved gently with the wind. Outside, white doves danced through the sky, circling the tall spires. Zeus stepped through the archway. Métis stood with her back to him, gazing at the distant peaks through the window. Her hair was tied up loosely, still damp from her morning wash. The sleeves of her robe were rolled to the elbow, her arms dusted faintly with powdered herbs. The table beside her was cluttered with vials and small bowls, crushed root, ground stone, and dried leaves. The beginnings of something alchemical, or maybe something older. "You're late," she said softly, not turning. Zeus didn't respond right away. He just walked in, slow and steady, and then sat down on the edge of the low couch by the inner hearth. "I came as soon as I could," he said. Métis finally turned. Her face was unreadable but not cold. She studied him like a puzzle that had solved itself too early. "I heard what happened in Asgard," she said. "And what was said?" "I figured you would." She stepped closer, barefoot across the cool marble, until she stood across from him. "Then you already know what I'm going to ask." Zeus leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on his knees. "You're going to ask about Olympus. About Hera. About if anything's changed." She gave a faint smile. "I was going to ask if you brought me anything." Zeus blinked, then laughed under his breath. "You always were better at reading me than I was at hiding." He reached into the folds of his robe and pulled out a thin, flat case carved from ashwood. No symbols. No locks. Just smooth, warm grain polished by storm wind and time. Métis raised a brow as she took it and opened the lid. Inside lay a folded piece of violet silk, and nestled within it, a single shard of crystal. It pulsed faintly with gold and pale blue, like frozen skylight. She turned it over in her palm. From the well. Zeus nodded. Mimir said it shows only truths when dropped into still water. Useful, Métis murmured. Or dangerous? Zeus met her eyes. Both. They sat in silence for a moment, letting the weight of it settle. Métis turned toward the window again, letting the light catch the edge of the crystal. They tried to kill me while you were gone, she said, like she was commenting on the weather. Zeus didn't move. I know, he replied. Métis glanced over her shoulder, eyes narrowing just slightly. You're not surprised. I know, that's why I asked Mother for help. And Hera? He looked away, voice low. She knows. A soft breeze rolled through the upper balcony, brushing against the marble like a quiet breath. The sun hadn't fully risen yet, its light spilled halfway over the edge of the spires, casting long golden streaks across the floor. Zeus stood at the edge of the balcony with his hands behind his back. The air was still, but something in the tension of his shoulders told a different story. His dark cloak swayed faintly around his boots, untouched by wind. Behind him, Métis stirred. She blinked, still wrapped in sheets, the scent of herbs and lavender thick in the morning. She sat up slowly and looked toward him. You're up early, she murmured. Zeus didn't turn. Couldn't sleep. There was silence for a moment. The kind that stretches without needing to be filled. Métis shifted to the edge of the bed, wrapping the light robe around her bare shoulders. Her voice was soft but knowing. What are you thinking? Zeus didn't answer at first. His eyes were locked on the vast horizon, where Olympus towered over all creation, regal and silent. Below, the courtyard slowly came to life, priests lighting incense, dryads stretching near the fountains, and heralds preparing their scrolls for the day's decrees. Finally, he spoke. I'm thinking about what I'm about to do. Métis watched him for a long second, then nodded once. She already knew. He turned toward her now, and though his expression was calm, his eyes held that storm glow again. Quiet thunder. Wrath not yet spoken. They tried to kill you, he said. It doesn't matter if they failed. If I let it slide, they'll only grow bolder. Next time, they'll succeed. Métis stood, bare feet brushing the cold marble. She didn't argue. Good. Zeus studied her. You're not going to tell me to be cautious? No, she said simply. You've already chosen. Besides, they made their move first. Her eyes flicked toward the balcony, toward the mountain stretched below. Make them regret it. He stepped forward, leaned in slightly, and pressed his forehead gently against hers, just for a moment. Then, with a breath, he vanished. A single flash of lightning cracked across Olympus, streaking through the skies like a god's blade. The air sizzled. Every bird in the high branches scattered. And then, silence. Far below, past the eastern towers and gilded halls, the wing of Hera's private court stood quiet. Too quiet. Inside, the conspirators had gathered again. Kratos sat upon a carved basalt throne, one arm resting lazily on the armrest, the other gripping the pommel of the massive black axe that leaned against his side. His dark bronze skin shimmered faintly in the torchlight, his gaze unreadable. To his left, Bia knelt, stoic, motionless. To his right, Phobos leaned against a broken pillar, idly flipping a blade between his fingers. He hummed a low, tuneless sound. Icelus drifted along the back of the chamber, his white robes fluttering behind him. The dream mist clung to his body like a second skin, and the symbols he'd drawn in the air still hung there, flickering. The scent of blood still clung to the air from the last attempt. We failed, Kratos said simply, voice flat like cold steel. But not for long, Phobos muttered, cracking his neck. She won't stay hidden forever. Eventually, she'll be exposed again. Bia's gaze didn't waver. The longer she breathes, the more dangerous she becomes. Dreams don't die, Icelus whispered to no one in particular. But we can make them forget how to wake. That was when the doors cracked open. Not with ceremony. Not with noise. Just opened. And the air in the room dropped by several degrees. They all turned. And saw him. Zeus stepped inside, lightning flickering beneath the surface of his skin. His cloak had changed. He wore the black raiment of war, etched in golden thunder, no crown on his brow, just stormlight in his eyes. Phobos straightened. Zeus. We weren't expecting silence, Zeus said. The word rolled like thunder. Phobos flinched, and the dagger in his hand melted into molten slag. Zeus's gaze didn't move from Kratos. You knew what you were doing, he said quietly. You knew she was alone. You knew I was in Asgard. And you thought you could move while I wasn't looking. Kratos rose slowly, his massive form towering even over Zeus. We serve Olympus. Not just your desires. Métis, you tried to kill the mother of Olympus's future. And you dare speak to me of loyalty. Kratos said nothing. The hall flickered. The torches dimmed. Outside, the skies began to churn. Icelus floated closer, dream smoke thickening. This isn't wise, my king. Shadows strike from within. Always have. Always will. Zeus stepped forward. You think you know shadows? You think you can walk in them without me seeing you? He raised his hand. And the storm answered. A crack of thunder split the roof. Lightning shot through the ceiling like a spear of wrath, striking the marble floor in front of them. The stone shattered, molten heat spilled across the cracks. Bia was already moving, her blade out, eyes locked, but Zeus didn't even look her way. He flicked his fingers. And she dropped. A bolt pierced her shoulder, and the shockwave slammed her against the far wall. Phobos snarled, trying to vanish into the shadows, but they wouldn't take him. Zeus had sealed them. He tried to run. He made it 2 steps. Lightning coiled around his ankle, dragged him back, and slammed him face first into the floor. Zeus turned to Icelus next. The Dreamweaver didn't move. He merely stared, trembling. I saw this, he whispered. But I thought it was a dream. No, Zeus said. It was a warning. The air twisted, then a sudden flash, and Icelus was gone. Banished. Stripped of his power. Sent into the void between dream and death, where even gods fear to linger. Only Kratos stood now, motionless. Zeus walked up to him, slow, eyes level. I trusted you. Kratos's jaw clenched. I serve Hera. You serve Olympus, Zeus said coldly. And Olympus has made its choice. He raised his hand one last time. But Kratos didn't flinch. Instead, he lowered his gaze. Then strike. Zeus looked at him for a moment longer, then turned. I don't need to, he said, his voice like rain over stone. You're already broken. The air surged again. And Zeus vanished in a flash of lightning, leaving scorched marble, stunned silence, and a storm that would not calm for days. Back in the high balcony chamber, Métis stood in the doorway, watching the clouds churn in the distance. Her hands were folded, calm, and quiet. She knew. He had done what needed to be done. And Olympus would remember. Hera's private court, the doors slammed open. Kratos burst in, blood on his shoulder where the lightning had grazed him. His steps were uneven, but his face, still defiant. Behind him, torchlight trembled from the wind that chased his entrance, as if Olympus itself refused to stay calm. Hera was seated by the high arched window, her back straight, robe draped loosely over her shoulders, and hair undone and cascading like wine-stained silk down her spine. She didn't turn. I felt the sky crack, she said. So, he came. Kratos fell to one knee. The sound echoed off the marble. It wasn't just a warning this time. He struck us down. All of us. Hera slowly turned her head, green eyes locking onto him. There was a moment of silence between them, long and sharp like the pull of a bowstring. And yet, you crawled back to me, she said. Kratos gritted his teeth, the shame clinging to his breath. I tried to hold my ground. Did you? Her voice wasn't raised, but it cut all the same. Aeschylus is gone, Kratos continued. Banished. Phobos is crippled. Bia, she might never wake. Hera finally stood. Her movements were slow, elegant, and sharp all at once, like a blade sliding free from silk. She stepped past the mirror, past the flickering braziers, until she stood directly in front of him. She didn't look angry. Not fully. But the tightness in her jaw, the flicker behind her lashes, it wasn't panic. It was something else. Control. You misjudged him, Kratos said lowly. We all did. He's not just a storm anymore. He's something colder. Hera narrowed her gaze. I didn't misjudge, she murmured. I just miscalculated the timing. Kratos blinked. What? Hera stepped past him, toward the heart of her private chambers. Her bare feet whispered over marble as she reached for a simple silver pitcher. She poured herself a drink slowly. The wine didn't splash. It simply coiled inside the cup like dark ink, rich and patient. He chose Métis, Hera said, staring into the cup. Openly. Boldly. And now, he's begun to act like a king. Kratos slowly pushed himself up, muscle stiff. So what now? He asked. Do we retaliate? Strike again. Hera sipped from her cup, eyes still on the horizon. No, she said softly. Kratos frowned. No. Hera finally looked at him, then reached up and rested a hand on her stomach. The gesture was so small, but deliberate. Kratos's eyes widened. You're with child. She didn't answer right away. Just moved her fingers slowly, gently across her belly. The robe shifted, and the firelight caught her skin, bathing her in a faint, divine warmth. He doesn't know, she said finally. And I don't plan to tell him. Not yet. Kratos's voice dropped to a whisper. Is it his? Hera's lips curved, but it wasn't a smile. Of course it is. She walked over to the map carved into the wall, an ancient, living design of realms and mountains, shifting faintly with the breath of Olympus itself. Her fingers hovered over the mortal world, its outline glowing with soft, pale light. I need time. I need distance. And I need you to vanish, she said. Kratos straightened. To the mortal world? She nodded. Take what's left of your strength. Disappear into their lands. Wait. Watch. When the time comes, I'll summon you again. Kratos bowed, fist to chest. As you command. But as he turned to leave, he hesitated at the doorway. And the child? He asked, his voice softer now. Hera didn't look at him. She simply turned back toward the open window, staring into the rising sun as the wind stirred her robe. This child will change Olympus, she whispered. Not with whispers in dark halls, but with fire. With rage. With war in his blood. Her hand pressed lightly against her belly again, and this time there was something in her eyes, something ancient and feral and proud. He will be everything Zeus fears, and everything Olympus needs. Kratos lowered his head, then vanished into the shadows beyond the chamber, his steps fading into silence. Hera stood alone. The breeze moved through the curtains like breath over coals. And deep within her, the spark of a future god stirred. The child moved. She felt it. And she smiled. Not with joy, but with purpose. Ares, she said quietly. That will be your name. Below, Olympus carried on. Priests chanted. Gods whispered. But above them all, in the quiet halls where schemes were carved and destinies shaped, a mother laid her plans. Not for revenge. For dominance. And this time, it wouldn't be through seduction, nor shadow, nor poison slipped into goblets. It would be through legacy. Through war. Through blood. Just as Hera began weaving her quiet rebellion in the shadows of Olympus, far above her, within the marble halls of the throne chamber, Zeus sat alone. The air was heavy with stillness, but his mind wasn't. He had felt something. Not from Hera. From Métis. She had been sleeping lighter lately, holding her stomach more often. Her eyes carried something deeper than wisdom now. Something maternal. Zeus stood, walked toward the sacred pool behind the throne steps, and extended his hand. His power flowed through the water, whispering across time, softly reaching into fate's threads. He needed to see. The surface rippled, blurred, then cleared. A vision took form, two figures. A girl, armored in silver and light, rising from the mind of war itself. Her steps were sharp. Her presence was radiant. Then, another. A boy cloaked in fury and smoke, dragging fire behind every footfall. The two clashed. Not once. Not as enemies. Not as rivals. But as something deeper. Equals. Opposites. Athena and Ares. Zeus blinked slowly. They were the same age. Which meant Hera was also pregnant. He didn't speak. Didn't move. Only the flicker of power in his eyes gave anything away. A single thought echoed in his head like thunder trapped in a bell. Two gods. Two mothers. One war to come. The future had already begun weaving itself. He looked toward the corridor Métis often walked through, her presence still lingering like soft perfume. She was carrying Athena. He saw it clearly now. A child born of thought and power, not violence. One who would become a goddess of strategy, intellect, and silent judgment. But if Athena and Ares were to be born around the same time, it meant Hera had kept her secret well. Zeus exhaled slowly, his fingers curling at his side. "Clever woman," he muttered, a faint smirk touching his lips. This wasn't a surprise born of love. This was war, in its first quiet step. But he wouldn't stop it. Not yet. Let them both grow. Let them both rise. Let Olympus see what kind of children gods could bear, when love, hate, and legacy were tangled too tightly to pull apart. The sky over Greece that morning was a pale gold. Thin clouds stretched across the heavens like faded scrolls. And beneath them, the mortal realm pulsed quietly. Not with the roar of wars or cries of conquest, but with the soft rhythms of life. Goats climbed narrow hills. Merchants shouted beneath faded canopies. A mother scolded her children in a dusty alley. And in the midst of it, a man walked. He wore no crown. No lightning danced in his veins. No divine glow traced his skin. Just a cloak, earth-colored and rough, and a pair of sandals too thin for the road. He had brown hair now. A short beard. Human eyes. Zeus, king of Olympus, father of the skies, walked among mortals for the first time in a long, long time. And no one knew. A boy passed him with a basket of bread. "Watch it," the boy said, bumping his side. Zeus stepped aside and smiled faintly. This was different. Real. There was no divine music here. No aura that made mortals fall to their knees. Just sweat, dirt, and breath. He wandered through the agora. The smells hit first, spices, olives, and blood from fresh-cut meat. Then the sounds. Priests stood at shrines, calling to the gods in different tongues. Some shouted praises to him, Zeus, Thunderbringer, protector of oaths. Others prayed to Hera, to Demeter. A few still whispered to the Titans in secret. And then, "Shangdi, protect my house," said a traveler from the east, kneeling beside a carved stone he carried with him. Zeus blinked. Stared. That name wasn't Greek. He moved closer. Watched. The Mun prayed in Mandarin. The words were foreign, but the feeling wasn't. It was faith. Raw. Open. Desperate. Another corner. A woman traced an Egyptian symbol onto the wall with ash and kissed her fingers. A Mun lit a candle before a small wooden idol from India. Another dropped coins into a bowl marked with Norse runes. And it hit Zeus, not like a strike, not like lightning, but like the soft press of waves against skin. The mortal realm wasn't just Greek anymore. It had changed. And yet, all of it, every prayer, every whisper, every offering, flowed upward, through the thin veil of sky, into them. The divine realm. This world was the anchor. The heart of belief. And it beat louder than he remembered. He moved again, blending into the crowd. No one recognized him, not even the old priest chanting his name. That priest had no idea the very god he prayed to was brushing shoulders with beggars and children just a few feet away. At the edge of the market, a group of men argued over taxes. One of them slammed his hand on the table. By Zeus, I swear I'll burn this stall down. Zeus raised an eyebrow. Don't do that, he muttered, walking past them. The road dipped into a small village just outside the main city. There, life slowed. Homes were humble. Roofs sagged. Chickens ran freely. He sat on a rock beneath a fig tree and just watched. A girl ran barefoot across the dirt, laughing as a dog chased her. A woman carried water jars up the hill, her back curved like a question mark. An old man rested near the well, face turned to the sun. Zeus closed his eyes. For a moment, he forgot who he was. And when he opened them again, something tugged at his side. A boy, maybe 5, stood there, holding up a bruised fruit. You dropped this, mister. Zeus stared at the boy, then looked down. The fruit hadn't been his. But he took it. Thanks. The boy nodded but didn't leave. You from the mountains? Zeus thought. Something like that. You look sad, the boy said bluntly. I've seen a lot, Zeus replied. The boy didn't ask more. Just sat beside him. Wanna see something cool? Before Zeus could answer, the boy ran ahead, waving for him to follow. They crossed a hill and came to a quiet field. And there, beneath the open sky, the boy pointed upward. Look, he said. That's where the gods live, right? Zeus didn't respond at first. Just watched the boy point at nothing. The sky was empty, clear and blue. Maybe, he said. My grandma says they watch us. All the time. Zeus turned toward the boy. And do you believe that? The boy hesitated. Sometimes. He looked down. But sometimes I think they forget. Zeus felt that one. Deep. What would you say to them, if they were listening right now? Zeus asked. The boy shrugged. I'd say, don't forget us. Silence. Zeus stood slowly, placing the fruit beside the boy. I won't, he said. And then he left. Later that evening, as the sky burned red with the setting sun, Zeus walked into a small temple, barely more than a shrine. No priests. Just candles. Inside, he knelt. For the first time. In a long, long time. He didn't pray. He listened. To the voices. The ones that rose from every corner of the world. From Greece. From China. From Egypt. From the cold north and burning east. And they were all different. But they reached the same sky. His sky. He whispered, you're all still looking up. A pause. Then, quietly, to himself, like a god who had remembered something old, something human, I see you now. The next morning, Zeus returned to Olympus. His feet were bare. His cloak was dusty. His eyes were not glowing but clear. And in the halls of heaven, gods felt a shift. A breeze. Something subtle, but powerful. Their king had walked the world. And he'd come back with no thunder, no flame, just quiet knowing. The mortal realm mattered. And soon, when the children of gods were born and the heavens stirred again, he would remember that walk. That boy. That promise. I won't forget you. The sky was gray that day. Not stormy. Not broken. Just quiet, like it was holding its breath. Outside the village of Pelion, smoke curled from the chimney of a modest home. Not too large. Not poor either. Simple. A place built by hands that knew battle but craved peace. Inside, Kratos sat at the edge of a wooden bed, the floor creaking beneath his weight. His gauntlets were gone. No blades on his back. Just a tunic, worn at the shoulders, and calloused fingers that still hadn't forgotten war. Across the room, a child laughed. His child. Dark-haired, chubby-cheeked, barely old enough to speak full words, but strong, even in play. The boy swung a wooden sword in the air, mimicking moves Kratos had once used to kill titans. And beside him, the boy's mother hummed softly while stirring a clay pot over the fire. Her name was Melina. A mortal. No blood of gods in her. Just courage, quiet and real. She hadn't asked who he was when he arrived months ago, wounded, angry, and thrown from Olympus by Hera's command. She only offered him food. Then space. Then silence. Kratos had never meant to stay. But he had. He stood now, crossing the room to place a gentle hand on the boy's head. The child grinned, sword raised high. "Will you teach me today?" the boy asked. Kratos knelt. "Only if you promise not to hit the goats again." They started it. Kratos gave a short breath of laughter. He was about to answer, then he felt it. A shift in the air. A scent of roses, cold and thick. The temperature dropped. He rose slowly. Turned. And there she was. Hera. No grand entrance. No golden chariot. Just standing at the doorway, her dress the color of dusk, her hair like wine. Her eyes, sharp. Melina didn't scream. She just froze. Her body instinctively stepped between the goddess and her son. Kratos moved fast, placing himself between them. Hera. Kratos. Silence. The fire popped in the corner. "I told you to keep a low profile," Hera said. Her voice was smooth and controlled, but her eyes glinted with something sharp beneath the surface. "Do you remember that?" Kratos didn't answer. "You were supposed to watch. Blend in. Learn. Instead." She stepped further inside. Her hand grazed the wall as she walked. "You've gathered followers. Spread whispers that the gods have grown weak. That Olympus is distant. Cold. And you." She turned to him fully. "You offered them warmth." Kratos didn't blink. They were forgotten. They were managed. They were hungry. Scared. I gave them strength. "You gave them you," she snapped. Melina held her son tighter. "You think I don't know?" Hera stepped closer, eyes flashing. "Temples in your name. Hunters wearing your sigil. A priest, a mortal priest, calling you the flame of rebirth. You even branded that title on a cliff face. I didn't tell them to worship me." "No," Hera said softly. "You just let them." Kratos lowered his gaze, jaw tight. "I fought for you. You sent me to kill Métis. I failed. Zeus spared me. I didn't ask for that. You sent me here and threw me away. And in all of that, I found something real." He looked back at Melina and the boy. "I found peace." Hera's gaze followed his. "I believe you," she said quietly. He turned toward her, surprised. "I do," she added. "But that doesn't matter." He stepped forward. "I never meant to challenge you." "You didn't have to," she whispered. Her aura flared. Not with fire or thunder, but with raw presence. The room dimmed. The edges of the walls flickered, as if Olympus itself had taken a breath and held it. "I gave you a chance," she said. "Not because I forgave you. Not because I pitied you. But because I thought, maybe you could be more than a weapon." She looked at Melina. "You made a family. I didn't expect that." Kratos tensed. "Don't touch them. I'm not here for them." The air around her stilled. "I'm here for you." Kratos clenched his fists. His veins lit faintly with divine heat, the remnants of power he hadn't used in months. But he didn't move. Not yet. Melina stepped forward, voice trembling. "Please, he's not the man he was when you sent him here." Hera's eyes softened. "Just a little." "I believe you too," she said. Then she looked at Kratos. "But it's too late." A pause. "You were made for war, Kratos. It clings to you. Even in peace, you attract conflict. You breathe it. And no matter how quiet you try to live, someone always gets hurt." She raised her hand. Kratos didn't flinch. The room pulsed. Light bent. For a second, it looked like the world itself paused. Melina screamed his name. And in a flash, white, silent, soft, he was gone. No blood. No sound. Just absence. Hera stood there, arms still raised. Then slowly, She lowered it. Her eyes flicked to the child, wide-eyed and clutching his mother's leg. She walked toward them. Melina trembled, but didn't run. Hera knelt in front of the boy. "You won't remember this," she said softly. "You'll grow up strong. Not because of gods, but because of her." She rose again, looked at Melina. "You'll be left alone. Olympus won't touch you." Melina's voice cracked. "Why spare us?" Hera didn't answer right away. Then she said, almost tiredly, "Because I'm not like him." She turned to leave, but paused at the door. "There's a field outside the village. He buried something there. Armor. Weapons. His past." She looked over her shoulder. "Let it stay buried." And then, she was gone. The fire flickered back to life. The child sniffled. Melina dropped to her knees, holding him close. Outside, the sky remained gray, but not empty. In the distance, thunder rolled softly, low, far, like a memory whispering through the clouds. And in the field beyond, where an old oak tree stood watch over the hills, the grass swayed gently over a patch of earth that had been disturbed once, then covered again. Beneath it, silence and peace. The days slipped by. Pelian skies turned from gray to gold, then gray again. Seasons didn't announce themselves here. They just arrived, slow and soft. The village stayed quiet. Smoke still rose from chimneys. Goats still kicked over buckets. And the old oak in the field kept its silent watch over the patch of earth that hadn't been touched again. No one knew what had happened that day. No one saw the goddess. No one heard Melina cry into her son's hair. Kratos' name was never spoken again, not even in the wind. Just folded away into silence, like the Mun had never existed. But in Olympus, silence didn't last long. Months passed, and with them came whispers. It started in small corners of the realm, nymphs trading glances, minor gods pausing mid-drink. A rumor with no voice but heavy breath. Métis was pregnant. At first, it sounded ridiculous. She hadn't been seen since the day of the war summit. No public visits. No temple appearances. No rituals. Not even a bird or snake of hers in the gardens. Just gone. But then, someone saw her silhouette in the courtyard of Echoes. Another swore they caught a glimpse of her cloak gliding through the mist near the hanging pools. And one priestess, just one, claimed she heard Métis's voice at night, humming. By the time the news hit Olympus proper, it was wildfire. Métis. Pregnant. By Zeus. And just like that, the air shifted. Not in the heavens. Not yet. In Hera. She didn't show it. She didn't scream. She didn't tear through Olympus with storms and fire like some expected. No. She vanished. Not from Olympus, but from the eyes of Olympus. Her throne stayed empty. Her temple stayed closed. Her servants were dismissed. No one knew where she was. But she was there. Watching. Listening. Burning. And no one dared to speak her name around Zeus. He said nothing either. Just sat taller. Walked heavier. Like the crown on his head had gained weight. He never confirmed the pregnancy. Never denied it. But sometimes, when he stood on the edge of the sky altar and looked down at the clouds, he smiled. Just slightly. Hestia tried to reach Métis once. She left offerings in the shrine of thought, lit candles made from starlight, and whispered into them. But Métis didn't answer. Athena wasn't born yet. No one had come through Métis yet. But something had changed. The stars above her chamber spun slower now. The realm around her felt like it held its breath, much like the sky did over Pelion that day. The gods above and the creatures below, all waited. Because this wasn't just any birth. This would be the first child of Zeus. And not just a child, Métis' child. The goddess of thought and strategy. The one who saw 12 moves ahead of everyone, even the fates. Her child wouldn't just be powerful. It would be dangerous. A wild card in a realm where prophecy held more weight than truth. And somewhere, in the quiet folds of Olympus, Hera knew this. Felt it. She didn't need to see Métis to feel her swelling with life. To feel Olympus itself react to the rhythm of a growing heartbeat. A new thread was being spun, one Hera didn't control. She sat alone in a forgotten wing of her own palace. A room no one entered anymore. There were no mirrors in it. No lights. Just dust, old scrolls, and a single cradle made from divine wood that had never been used. It had been carved for her. A gift from Hephaestus when he was still young, still desperate to earn her smile. She stared at it often now. And wondered. What kind of mother would Métis be? She wouldn't show it, but Hera's thoughts tangled at night. She'd whisper to the empty room, asking questions no one would answer. Did Zeus love Métis? Was it just one of his fleeting whims again? Or was this the start of something else? She didn't cry. Not once. But sometimes, when she sat too long, the walls would crack from the weight of her silence. Elsewhere in Olympus, preparations were being made. Not openly. Not proudly. But subtly. Quietly. Hidden among rituals and feasts, scrolls were drawn, midwives summoned, and protective seals written into the wind itself. Not for Métis' safety, but for everyone else's. Because when a godchild comes into the world feels it. And sometimes, the world breaks a little. The moon grew heavier each night. The stars dimmed just enough to be noticed. The air, even in the highest peaks, started to feel thick. Like something was coming. Like the universe was tightening around a single point. And then, one night, it began. Far beyond the courtyards. Beyond the temples. Deep within the crystal garden that only Métis walked, a flower bloomed. It wasn't large. Or bright. It didn't sing. It didn't dance. Just opened, slow and patient, with petals made from the first thoughts the cosmos ever had. And where it bloomed, Métis stood. Her cloak was soaked with dew. Her hair was down, long and wild, like it hadn't seen combs in weeks. Her face was pale, her lips pressed into a thin line. Her eyes, still sharp, but tired. She held her belly with both hands now. The time had come. The child was ready. She breathed out, slowly. Her knees gave slightly. The wind around her stilled. The very leaves on the crystal trees froze. And in the silence of that sacred garden, unseen by gods, untouched by fate, Métis whispered one word. Now. A soft quake rolled through Olympus. The bells in the Temple of Truth rang by themselves. Every fire dimmed for just a breath. And somewhere in that dark, forgotten room, Hera's head turned sharply. She felt it. The child of Zeus and Métis was coming. The stars blinked slower that night. All of Olympus held its breath. In the crystal garden, silence wrapped around Métis like a cloak. Her hands gripped a polished stone slab smoothed by ancient waters, the curve of her belly heavy with the weight of something the world had never seen before. Around her, the garden pulsed. Trees made of light trembled gently, crystal leaves shimmered with tension, and the ground itself hummed low, like it could sense what was coming. Métis didn't scream. That wasn't her way. Her face was still, but her grip left cracks in the stone. She panted once. Twice. And then her knees buckled. Oceanus moved to catch her, but Styx was already there, her shadowy form folding behind Métis, steadying her with long, cold fingers. She's close, Styx whispered. Oceanus narrowed his eyes, his deep sea-blue robe trailing in the garden mist. Beside him, Tethys, his wife, the ancient mother of rivers, stood with arms crossed tightly. Her face was stone. Where is he? Tethys asked. Gone, Styx said, not looking up. He should be here. She doesn't need him here, came Hades' voice, steady and low. He stood just behind them, arms at his side, cloak draped over his shoulder. His gaze never left Métis. That child is his, Tethys hissed. And he knows it, Hades answered. But he also knows this child will be fine. That's why we're here. A beat of silence. Just the trembling of leaves. Then Métis groaned, head low, hair clinging to her sweat-drenched skin. She bit her lip hard enough to bleed. Elsewhere. Hera gasped. Not in pain. But from effort. She was not in a garden. not surrounded by shimmering trees or old gods whispering in the dark. She was in the deepest sanctum of her own palace, sealed behind thick gold doors, with two of her oldest handmaidens by her side. And yet, even in that rich, warm room, her cries were hollow. Unlike Métis, Hera did not groan softly. She growled. "More!" she shouted at the maidens. "Push harder." Blood stained the white sheets. The air was thick. Candles flickered wildly, reacting to her wild aura. Her back arched, her arms shook, and the veins on her neck bulged. This was not a birth guided by peace. This was raw power fighting its way out. In the crystal garden, Hestia knelt beside Métis now, her small hands glowing with gentle fire. Not to burn, but to soothe. She whispered something into Métis' ear, and for a moment, the goddess relaxed. A small exhale. Then the next wave hit, and she screamed, not loud, not chaotic, but sharp. Controlled. Like her mind was splitting in two and she refused to let either half fall apart. Demeter stood not far off, chanting in an ancient tongue, a vine in her hands moving with every word. She wrapped it in a loop and laid it over Métis' belly, letting it pulse in rhythm with her breath. "She's almost there," Demeter whispered. Oceanus scoffed. "She should be resting between pushes. The pressure's too much." "You think she doesn't know that?" Tethys snapped. Back in the palace, Hera let out a shriek that shook the walls. Her maidens looked pale now. One was crying. The air around Hera was splitting. The divine power lashing out from her body made it hard to breathe. Still, she pressed on. She didn't call for Zeus. She didn't even think of him. Her eyes were locked on the golden ceiling above her bed, gritted teeth catching the prayer she would never speak aloud. In a small corner chamber of Olympus, far from both goddesses, Zeus stood alone. Not still. Not pacing. Just there. Staring at a golden bowl filled with swirling clouds. Watching both places at once. He saw Métis, surrounded by those who cared. He saw Hera, alone by choice. And though his fists clenched and his heart twisted, he didn't move. This wasn't neglect. He trusted Métis. Knew she would bring his daughter safely into the world. But Hera. He knew she was planning something. She had gone silent too fast. Accepted the news too easily. Zeus could feel her mind moving behind the pain. And he didn't want his son to be born into her bitterness. He would take him, before she fed him poison disguised as love. "Almost there," Hestia whispered to Métis. "Just once more. One more push." Métis didn't nod. Didn't speak. Her body answered for her. She arched forward. The garden pulsed. The leaves all shifted in the same direction. A soft cry cut through the trees. Then a silence deeper than death. Métis blinked slowly, then looked down. And in Hestia's arms, a girl. Small. Pink. Radiant. The moment she breathed, the clouds in the sky reformed. A ripple went through the stars. Even the fates, in their far-off realm, turned toward the heavens. "Your daughter," Hestia said, her voice breaking with warmth. "She's perfect." Métis reached for her, arms trembling. She held the child close, staring at her like the cosmos had folded into her hands. And maybe, it had. Hades stepped closer. Quiet. Serious. "She has your eyes," he said. "She'll be more than me," Métis whispered. "Far more." And then, in the palace. Another cry. This one is rougher. Sharper. A boy. Red-faced and already shaking the air with his cries. Hera collapsed back onto the sheets, her face pale, her hair clinging to her body like vines. She didn't ask to hold him. Just stared. "Bring him to me," she finally said. The maidens obeyed. She looked at the boy for a long, long time. Then whispered something no one heard. A name. Maybe. A promise. Or a threat. But outside her room, in the halls of Olympus, the walls trembled. Two divine children had entered the world. One, born of thought and strategy, surrounded by calm and love. The other, born of power and pride, wrapped in thunder even before he could crawl. And Zeus, still watching, took a breath. Both were his. The silence around Hera's chamber was thick. No priest. No oracle. No herald dared approach. Even the maids who helped her had slipped away the moment she gave the order. The gold door stayed sealed, heavy with the weight of her wrath and exhaustion. And yet, the air shifted. A breeze moved through the chamber, even though the windows were closed. The golden curtains fluttered, and the candle flames bent all at once. Then the doors creaked. Slow. Heavy. She snapped her eyes up from the bundle in her arms, her voice sharp. Who dares? And then she saw him. Zeus. He stood just inside the threshold, his white robe half open, hair a mess like he hadn't slept in days, shoulders broader than the doorframe. No guards. No servants. Just him. Her eyes narrowed. How? Zeus stepped forward without a word, his boots silent against the marble floor. The storm in his aura was gone, calm now, like the sky before it weeps. He looked at the boy in her arms, not at her. Then his voice came, low and smooth. I'm the God King, he said, as if it explained everything. If I don't know something as small as this, I might as well give up the throne. Hera looked away. She wasn't dressed in silks or gems. Just sweat, blood, and exhaustion. Her hair clung to her face, her body trembled with the aftershocks of pain, but her grip on the baby stayed firm. Zeus walked closer. She didn't stop him. He stopped beside her bed, looking down at the boy, red-faced, squirming in Hera's arms. His eyes were still sealed shut, his tiny fists trembling. But there was heat in his breath. Power humming beneath his skin. Zeus let out a short breath through his nose, then sat on the edge of the bed. He's strong, he said. Hera didn't reply. She didn't need to. Zeus reached out slowly, giving her time to pull back if she wanted to. But she didn't. She let him lift the child gently, his large hands cradling the small weight with more care than expected. Zeus stared at the boy for a long time. The way he twitched. The strength in his cry. The rawness in his soul. He rubbed his thumb across the child's cheek, and the baby stilled a little, blinking beneath the lids. Then Zeus smiled. Not wide. Not proud. Just quiet. Like he understood something no one else did. I'll name him, he said. Hera looked at him then, her voice sharp again. You think you can, Ares, Zeus cut in softly, still not looking at her. The god who won't wait to be asked. The flame of war. Not war itself, not yet. But the fire that leads to it. He held the child close, pressing his forehead gently to the tiny one. Ares, he whispered again. The baby twitched, and stopped crying. Hera stared. You shouldn't be here, she said quietly. This is my chamber. I know. I didn't want you to come. I know. Then why? Because he's mine, Zeus said, eye still on the baby. Just like she is. Hera blinked. She. Zeus finally looked at her, and there was a flicker in his gaze. Something deep. Métis gave birth tonight too, he said. Hera's body tensed. Of course she did, she muttered. You always wanted a goddess of strategy beside your throne. She didn't ask for the throne. And yet you'll give it to her. No, he said plainly. She wouldn't take it even if I did. Hera's lip curled slightly, but Zeus didn't react. Do you want to hold him again? He asked softly. She didn't answer. But she extended her arms. Zeus placed Ares back into her grip, slow and sure. The baby shifted again, as if trying to find the warmth he liked best. Hera looked down. Her eyes weren't warm. But they weren't cold either. Just tired. I will raise him my way, she said. Zeus nodded once. I expect nothing less. She looked up at him. You'll favor her daughter. I won't favor anyone, Zeus said. I'll guide them. All of them. You'll fail. Maybe. He stood. And for a second, Hera thought he'd walk away just like that. But he didn't. He reached down again and touched Ares' little hand. The boy grabbed it, tight, strong. Zeus gave a small, surprised smile. Then let go. Train him well, he said, turning toward the door. You're not even going to ask what I'll teach him? Hera asked from behind him. No. Why not? Because I already know, he said without turning back. You'll teach him how to survive. And one day, I'll teach him how to rule. The door opened again. The cold outside slipped into the room. Zeus paused for a moment in the threshold. Ares will be his own storm, he said. But I'll be the sky that holds him. Then he left. The golden doors shut behind him with a soft click. And Hera sat alone again, with her son. The name lingered in her ears. Ares. God of raw strength. Of fury. Of breaking things before they can break you. She looked down at him. And for the first time, she smiled. Just a little. Outside, Zeus walked down the empty halls of Olympus, the marble echoing beneath his feet. He didn't look back. Didn't stop. He felt the weight in the air shifting. Two gods born tonight. Two forces pulling the sky in opposite directions. He passed a window. The stars shimmered low in the sky, still blinking slowly, as if Olympus itself had started breathing again. Tartarus stirred with the birth of Ares. Finally the promised child of Hera, but the Olympians like to play dirty. She might not bring the kid again, but I hope that's just my wishful thinking, or else I will have to step in myself. He said as he looked at the direction of Olympus, to the very part of Hera breastfeeding her boy. The halls toward Metis's chamber were quieter than Hera's, but not empty. He could hear them before he saw them, whispers and tension. The weight of waiting. When he turned the corner, the family was there. Oceanus stood by the marble pillar with folded arms, his face carved from salt and storm. Tethys was pacing, eyes sharp like blades hiding behind age and calm. Dione leaned against the wall, face unreadable, while Eurynomé simply looked down, shaking her head slowly. They all turned the moment Zeus stepped into view. And no one bowed. Tethys stepped forward first, her voice sharp. Now you come. Zeus didn't flinch. Didn't slow. You vanished, Oceanus added, stepping in front of him. She screamed your name during the worst of it. And you were nowhere. Still, Zeus didn't stop walking. Dione scoffed. Your first child with a true wife, and you were off playing God King. He brushed past Oceanus without a glance, eyes locked ahead. You don't even look guilty, Eurynomé said quietly behind him. I don't, Zeus answered simply. Metis's door loomed ahead. Plain, unadorned. Unlike Hera's golden gates, this one was just heavy wood, polished and old. The kind mortals would use. Metis had insisted on it. No divine glow. No enchanted sigils. Just a door. He opened it without knocking. Inside, the room smelled of hot water and cedar. Dim torches lined the wall, flickering gently. It was warm, too warm, like a cocoon. Metis lay on the bed, half upright, sweat on her brow, silver hair damp and stuck to her cheek. She was dressed in a thin white robe, nothing extravagant. Her sharp gray eyes locked onto him the moment he stepped in. She didn't smile. Zeus shut the door quietly behind him. For a long second, nothing was said. Then Metis exhaled sharply and muttered, "Took you long enough." Zeus walked toward the bed, his boots moving slowly against the stone floor. Metis reached to the side, picked up a wet cloth, and threw it at his chest. It slapped him softly and fell. "That's all I had the strength for," she said flatly. Zeus caught it before it hit the ground and tossed it gently on the nearby stool. "You knew I was giving birth," Metis said, her voice steady, but her eyes didn't hide the anger. "You knew the moment Hera went into labor, so did I. We're bonded, you and I. The moment the girl stirred inside me, you should have felt it." "I did." And Zeus looked down for a moment, then back at her. "I needed to see him." Metis laughed, short and tired. "Of course you did. You always choose the loudest fire." "He's my son. And she's your daughter. One who came into the world quiet and thinking." He walked to the side of the bed, where the small crib stood. Metis followed his gaze as he peered over it. The baby was there, wrapped in silver cloth, sleeping in absolute stillness. No twitching. No noise. Just peaceful. Her tiny face was pale gold, her hair darker than expected. And her hands, folded over her chest like she knew what form mattered most. She didn't cry, Métis whispered. Just opened her eyes and stared. Like she was already judging us. Zeus bent down and lifted her, slow and careful. The girl shifted a little but didn't fuss. She looked like she was dreaming something older than Olympus itself. She's heavy, Zeus said. She's not, Métis replied, watching him closely. You're just tired. Zeus sat down beside Métis on the bed, holding the child gently in his lap. For a while, he just watched her. Everyone outside wants my head, he said. Good. You deserve a slap or two. Your mother wanted to scratch my face. She still might. Zeus smiled a little, then looked down again at the baby. She's perfect. She's mine, Métis said softly. And yours. Whether I like it or not. He nodded. Then he touched the baby's forehead with his. She will never be a weapon, he murmured. Not a pawn. Not a bargaining chip. Métis didn't speak, but her gaze softened slightly. I'll name her, Zeus said. Métis turned her face slowly toward him. You sure that's wise? Zeus didn't hesitate. Yes. He held the baby closer, eyes gentle but sure. Athena, he said. Not just the goddess of wisdom, but the force that makes mortals think before they kill. The mind before the blade. The baby shifted slightly in his arms, her brow creasing. Then, just for a blink, her small fingers reached out, brushing against his chest. She agrees, Zeus said. Métis smirked. She's not even a day old. She already knows more than I do. The room went quiet again. Zeus leaned his head back a little, resting against the bed's headboard. Métis turned her head toward him. You're not going to run again? No. You'll stay. Yes. She didn't smile. But her shoulders relaxed a bit. She will never kneel, Métis said. She won't have to. She'll see the world as it is. And remake it if she must. And the others? They'll follow. Or fall behind. Métis closed her eyes for a second. She'll hate you one day. Then I'll survive it. Zeus looked down again. Athena's eyes were still closed. But he could feel it, her mind stirring already. Like a sky cracking before thunder. She's going to change everything, he whispered. Métis looked at him then, fully. No anger. No sarcasm. Just quiet. Good, she said. Because this world needs changing. Zeus leaned in and kissed Athena's forehead. The baby blinked once, then fell still again. Outside the chamber, the rest of the family waited, but they didn't come in. Because for now, the storm and the mind that would shape the gods' future had finally met. And Olympus held its breath again. The silence outside Métis's chamber stretched on longer than anyone liked. Oceanus was the first to break. He grunted, shifted his weight off the pillar, and pushed away from the wall like he was tired of breathing the same air. Enough waiting, he said, mostly to himself. Tethys glanced over. Don't. But he was already walking. Oceanus moved with slow, deliberate steps, like a wave that didn't ask for permission. The others didn't stop him. Dion lowered her gaze, and Eurynomé folded her arms. No one said a word. They all wanted to go in. He just happened to be the one who did. When he reached the door, he knocked once. Then ignored it and stepped in. The room greeted him with warmth and silence. Zeus sat on the bed beside Métis, cradling the baby in his arms like the world would fall apart if he dropped her. Métis didn't look surprised to see Oceanus, just tired, her body still recovering from the weight of labor and everything that came with it. Oceanus, she said quietly. Métis. His eyes went to the child immediately. Is that her? She has a name, Zeus said. Athena. Oceanus nodded once. His footsteps weren't loud, but the weight of him filled the room. He stood before them, massive but calm, like an old storm finally at rest. Then he knelt. Not to Zeus. Not to Metis. But to Athena. His large hand reached out and hovered over her tiny chest. May the rivers bend for you. May the skies wait. May your thoughts strike faster than lightning, and may you never be silenced. Zeus watched him, silent. Metis tilted her head slightly. That sounded rehearsed. It was. Oceanus met her gaze with something close to fondness. Had a long walk over. Athena stirred a little in Zeus's arms. Her tiny hands flexed, then relaxed. Oceanus gave her a small nod, then rose back to his feet. She's different, he said. She is, Zeus replied. There was no need for ceremony. No glowing sigils. No divine fanfare. Oceanus simply turned toward the door again. But before leaving, he glanced at Zeus. You're going to shake the halls again, aren't you? I already have. Oceanus didn't smile. But something in his eyes tightened. Then he walked out. The door shut behind him. Metis exhaled slowly, her head falling back against the pillow. That was a good blessing. It was. You're going to do it, aren't you? Zeus looked down at Athena. I have to. Metis didn't argue. Then send Hades. Zeus nodded. He stood carefully, handed Athena back to Metis, and walked to the window. The torchlight painted gold on his bare chest as he looked into the night. Olympus breathed heavily outside. From within the shadows near the corner, a soft movement stirred. Hades stepped forward. He'd been there the whole time, watching, waiting, silent like the dark always is. His black robes clung to him like shadow, his silver eyes steady, unreadable. Zeus didn't turn around. You heard. I did. You know what to say? I do. Zeus finally looked over his shoulder. Make her understand. I'm not asking. Hades stepped closer. You're telling her? Yes. And what if she resists? She can bring Ares, Zeus said flatly. I'll take him too. I won't deny her that. But she doesn't get to decide where this goes. Hades studied his brother for a moment. You really think Athena will be the difference? She already is. Metis, still holding her daughter, didn't speak. But her eyes were open. Watching. Listening. Hades nodded once. Then I'll go. Now, Zeus said. Without a sound, Hades vanished. Not in a flash. Not with thunder or smoke. Just a shift. One moment he was there. The next, he was part of the shadows again. Zeus turned back to the window. His hands gripped the stone ledge. Down below, Olympus was glowing, cities lit by torchlight, clouds parting like curtains before a stage. He could feel it coming. The shift. The moment the old world would give way to something else. Behind him, Metis spoke again, voice low. She'll come angry. I know. She'll want blood. She always does. And if she demands to keep Ares? He's hers, Zeus said. I won't take him. But Athena will not grow up in a world that makes her kneel. Metis adjusted the silver blanket around the child. And you think the others will follow you? They already are. Metis chuckled softly. Even Poseidon. He'll grumble. Then fall in line. She closed her eyes again. And what about me? Zeus turned around, his back to the window. What about you? Metis opened one eye. You're going to make war out of peace. Rebuild Olympus around a girl barely born. All to change a future no one asked to change. He walked back toward her, slow steps. She's not just a girl. No, Metis agreed. She's an idea. You always loved ideas more than people. He stopped beside the bed. You'll stay, she said. I will. You'll protect her. With everything. You'll let her be more than you. I want her to be. Métis looked down at Athena again. The baby was asleep, unaware of the weight already pressing down on her tiny shoulders. I hope she hates you someday, Métis whispered. Zeus sat back on the edge of the bed. So do I. The room went quiet. And somewhere in the distance, the winds of Olympus changed direction. Hades stepped through the pillars of the palace where Hera was resting. The guards didn't stop him. They knew better. Hera sat alone in the courtyard, near the fountain, her hands brushing water like she was trying to read the surface. She didn't look up when he appeared behind her. I know why you're here, she said calmly. I doubt it, Hades replied. She turned, slowly. Her eyes were calm, but not soft. Like a blade left in ice. Then say it. Hades stepped forward, his tone even. Zeus sends word. He has claimed the child. She will be raised under his name. Under his rule. And he wants Ares brought to him. Hera rose from the bench. Not in anger. In silence. Hades waited. He sends his dog to bite for him now, she said. I'm not here to argue. No. You're here to deliver a message. She stepped forward. Tell him Ares is mine. He doesn't contest that. But he'll take him. Yes. Hera's hand clenched, but she didn't speak. Not right away. Then, softly, and the girl. Athena, Hades said. That's her name. She'll be raised beside him? She will be the cornerstone. Hera tilted her head. He never looked at me the way he looked at Métis. He never feared you the way he feared her. Silence. Hera stepped closer to the fountain again. The water shimmered under her fingertips. I'll bring Ares, she said finally. But not for him. For the boy. Hades gave the smallest nod. He'll be ready. I hope he is, she said. And then, without another word, Hera turned and walked toward the palace halls, where her son waited. Hades watched her go. The pieces were moving. And Olympus would never be the same again. The clouds above the hall of assembly thinned as Zeus stood at the top of the marble stairs, cradling Athena in his arms. Wind tugged at his cloak. The sky behind him burned with golden light, soft but fierce, like something divine was waiting just beneath it. The marble stretched out into a wide circle, a gathering place older than most of the gods themselves. Around the edges, the thrones of Olympus stood empty, waiting to be filled. Zeus didn't speak right away. He looked down at Athena. She was wrapped in a silver cloth Métis had woven herself. Her eyes hadn't opened since the walk from the chamber, but her little fists were closed, as if she already knew the world wouldn't be kind. When the first gods arrived, they came in silence. Poseidon, Demeter, Hestia, Leto, Themis, Mnemosyne. They stood in a loose half-circle across the hall, watching Zeus. They knew something had shifted. It wasn't just another declaration. This wasn't war or peace. This was the kind of moment that changed both. Zeus raised his voice, not loud, not proud. Just clear. She is born, he said. Athena. A few murmurs stirred the air, but no one interrupted. She is mine, Zeus continued. And she is Olympus. Poseidon narrowed his eyes. Olympus? She's barely breathing. Zeus glanced at him, calm. So were we once. Demeter stepped forward, arms folded. You've always been reckless. But this, what are you doing, Zeus? Zeus adjusted Athena in his arms. Starting over. The wind shifted. Before anyone could respond, a different presence settled into the hall. Cold, sharp, and quiet like winter. Hera. She walked in slow, steady steps, wearing a deep red robe that whispered against the floor. In her arms, she carried an infant swaddled in golden thread. Ares. She didn't speak right away. Just walked toward Zeus without breaking her gaze. The tension wrapped the air like a storm holding its breath. When she stopped a few steps away, she lifted Ares slightly. He is mine, she said. Zeus nodded. And he'll stay yours. But. There's no but, he said. Just truth. They are born into the same world. They will not grow apart. Hera's grip on Ares tightened. You think raising them close will stop what's coming? I think letting them grow up divided will guarantee it. Hera glanced down at Athena, then back to Zeus. She has Metissa's eyes. I know. I should hate her for it. Then do. She didn't answer. Just looked at Ares again. His little face was calm, eyes closed. Peaceful. Hera's fingers touched his cheek gently. I brought him because I won't let you steal him. I never planned to. You steal things in pieces, Zeus, she whispered. Not all at once. Bit by bit, until people forget what was theirs to begin with. I'm not here to steal, he said. Then why now? Zeus looked around. The gods had gone quiet again. Watching. Weighing. Because Olympus is broken, he said. We built something strong, but not something whole. I've seen the cracks. In the halls. In the hearts. And I won't let my daughter inherit a place already falling. He paused, letting the words settle. She is not a symbol, he said. She is not a weapon. She is not a rival. She is a beginning. And if we are wise, she won't be the only one. Poseidon scoffed lightly. What's that mean? We start popping out godlings to fix the world. Zeus didn't smile. Maybe we should. Themis stepped forward. Her voice was calm, like always. Are you asking for unity? Or obedience? Neither, Zeus said. I'm asking for presence. To stop looking only at each other and start looking at what comes after us. Hera said nothing. She didn't move. But after a long pause, she took another step forward, and placed Ares into a golden crib prepared at the center of the hall. Zeus followed. He placed Athena beside him. Two infants. One touched by thought, the other by war. Sleeping side by side, like the gods hadn't just been tearing themselves apart. Hera looked at Zeus. Her expression was unreadable. If he hurts her, she said, I'll make him regret ever being born. If she hurts him, Zeus replied, I'll do the same. The gods around the circle stayed quiet. Not in fear, but in something closer to awe. Not at Zeus. Not at Hera. But at the stillness. The kind of stillness that comes before something begins. Demeter stepped forward first. She walked slowly to the crib and knelt beside it. Her fingers brushed both their foreheads gently. For what it's worth, she said, they look like gods already. Leto came next. Then Hestia. Even Poseidon stepped close and grunted something under his breath, something half curse, half prayer. One by one, they came. And the circle changed. Not all at once. Not fully. But enough. When the last blessing had been spoken, Zeus turned to Hera again. You can stay, he said. She didn't answer. But she didn't leave either. She walked to the throne beside her own and sat. Not in surrender. Not in support. Just in witness. The sun lowered behind the marble columns. The wind calmed. And for the first time in a long time, the gods looked forward, not back. Athena stirred in her sleep. Ares shifted beside her. Two beginnings. And a war, still waiting in the bones of Olympus. But not tonight. Tonight, there was only silence. And breathe. And the weight of what comes next. Zeus turned to leave the hall, but just at the steps, his shoulder brushed someone lightly. Pardon me, the woman said, stepping back with a small bow. I didn't see you. She had dark hair in a loose braid, soft eyes, and a voice like still water, gentle, but with something old buried underneath. I'm Leto, she added. Daughter of Zeus and Phoebe. Zeus froze for half a breath. That name. That face. It came back to him like smoke from another life. He remembered her. She gave birth to Artemis and Apollo. Where she stood alone against Hera's wrath. Where she carried the sun and moon inside her. She didn't know any of that now. She was just Leto. Young. unshaped, still walking toward her place in the world. Zeus said nothing for a second, just stared at her. Then, with a slow nod, he replied, "It's fine." He moved past her, but his eyes lingered. Not out of desire. Out of memory. Out of something deeper. The kind of knowing that never fades, no matter how many lives pass. Leto watched Zeus walk away, eyes trailing after him like a breeze that hadn't made up its mind. She didn't even realize she was still standing there until a hand tapped her shoulder. "Girl," Demeter said flatly, munching on a red fruit that looked like a cross between a plum and a pomegranate. "You've been staring for a full minute." Leto blinked. "I was not." "You were." "I was just thinking." Demeter raised an eyebrow and took another lazy bite. "Thinking about his arms?" Leto choked on her breath, cheeks flushing. "What? No." Demeter didn't even blink. "His chest then." "It's fine. Most do. You're not the first and won't be the last." Leto puffed her cheeks in quiet protest, then smiled like someone trying to hide a daydream. He just looked strong. That's all. Like he could hold up the sky if it cracked. "That's because he probably could," Demeter said, licking juice off her fingers. "He's Zeus." Leto hesitated a second longer. "Does that bother you?" Demeter glanced sideways. "What? Him being a walking jawline with lightning in his veins?" "No. You sound bored." "I am." She tossed the fruit core into a marble bowl nearby. "I've seen women throw themselves at him. Mortal, divine, titanous. Doesn't matter. It's all the same in the end." Leto tilted her head, genuinely curious. "You've never felt anything?" Demeter shrugged. "He's my brother." "Still. I mean, come on, we are gods. Take a look at Hera, she did not care about that." "That doesn't mean I want to see him shirtless." Leto laughed, soft and breathy. "Well, I wouldn't mind." A new voice chimed in, warm and teasing. "That's because you haven't looked past the brother filter yet." They both turned. Maya stepped into the courtyard, sunlight catching in her braided hair. She wore a light white dress, flowy and sleeveless, like she just came from bathing in a stream. There was a glow to her, casual and calm, the kind that came with being one of the Pleiades, 7 sisters born of Atlas and Pleione. Each of them carried a piece of sky, a myth threaded into starlight. Maya was the eldest of the 7. Quiet, usually. But when she spoke, it came from somewhere real. Demeter arched an eyebrow. "You eavesdropping now?" "I was walking," Maya said. "You two talk loud." Demeter rolled her eyes. Leto looked down, embarrassed. Maya smiled gently and sat beside them. "It's not shameful, you know. Admiring Zeus. Most of Olympus does. They just pretend not to." Demeter snorted. "He's just a mun." Maya gave her a look. "No. He's not. That's the problem." Leto hugged her knees slightly, still pink in the cheeks. "So you've noticed it too?" "I've lived long enough to know the difference between beauty and presence," Maya said. "Zeus has both. It's not just his looks. It's the weight. The way he walks, like the world owes him nothing, but still follows." Demeter clicked her tongue. "You all sound like priestesses drunk on incense." "You're just blind because you think being blood-related and having a relationship is a taboo," Maya said calmly. "But look at him like a woman. Not a sister. Just once." Demeter paused. That hit different. The silence between them stretched a little longer. Then, like someone poking herself just to prove she couldn't be swayed, Demeter glanced back over her shoulder. Zeus was walking down the stairs now, cloak fluttering behind him, the soft light hitting his jawline in a way that felt sculpted. His shoulders rolled like thunder sleeping under his skin. Demeter looked away fast. Leto didn't. Maya smirked. "See it now." Demeter said nothing. She just picked another fruit from the bowl and took a slow, sharp bite. But her ears were pink. "I don't blame you," Maya added softly. It's not just the power. It's the way he carries it. Like he didn't ask for any of it, but he'll still shoulder all of it. That sounds poetic, Leto said. It's the truth. Another breeze swept through the courtyard. The columns of Olympus shimmered in the gold evening light. A faint sound of temple bells rang in the far distance, gods arriving, leaving, and murmurs of prayer spilling up from the mortal plane below. Leto looked up at the sky. You think he'll notice me again? Demeter rolled her eyes. He probably already did. He notices everything. Maya chuckled. He remembers things most gods forget. Names. Faces. Little things. If he locked eyes with you once, it's already in his mind somewhere. That made Leto smile. Demeter sighed. Well, good luck with that. Just don't come crying if you end up like Hera, jealous and paranoid. Maya arched a brow. You mean adored? Worshipped? Mothers of gods. Demeter groaned. I meant pregnant and regretting it. They all laughed. The kind of laugh that echoed softly in marble walls, like warmth trying to sneak into a place usually too grand for it. Leto stood slowly. I should go rest. I feel like today changed something. I just don't know what yet. Maya nodded. It did. But that's how it starts. Demeter didn't say anything, just tossed another seed into the bowl. Before Leto turned to go, she looked at them both. Thanks. For what? Demeter asked. We're talking like this. Like we're just us. Not roles. Not names. Just girls talking. Demeter's lips twitched. Don't get used to it. Maya smiled wider. You'll come back. When the next girl starts fawning, you'll want to see who it is. Leto laughed again and walked away down the corridor, her steps light, her face still quietly blushing. The moment she disappeared behind the column, Maya looked at Demeter again. You ever wonder if you missed your moment? Demeter was quiet. Then finally, without looking up, she said, all the time. The breeze rustled again. Not cold. Not warm. Just real. Just Olympus. And far off, below the clouds, thunder rumbled faintly, like Zeus laughing to himself.
And that concludes this episode. If you enjoyed it, I'd seriously love it if you guys could leave a like on the video, as it genuinely helps out so much, and it keeps me going, plus it takes only 1 second. That said, have a wonderful day. See you in the next one.